Hey everybody, welcome to Rising from the Ashes. This is a very special group show that we're doing today, something near and dear to the heart of a lot of people. And that's why I think this is very important show that we're doing, because we're going to talk today about uh, the deep story that has penetrated the collective consciousness at the turn of the 20th century, that is embedded with a bunch of different stuff that has been decoded before and will continue to be decoded again. The Wizard of Oz, Frank Baum, BLF, FLB, whatever it is. This man was a mystery. Man was a theosophist, and so we're gonna get into that. And I hope you guys are gonna enjoy, because I'm sure you guys have seen the movie and potentially even read the books, and it's a wonderful world, that wonderful wizard. I want to introduce first Timothy Ryan. I found him on academia.com through his paper that he wrote called the Alchemical, or I'm going to butcher the name, sorry, but it's the Alchemical Story of the Wizard of Oz. And I was like, oh my God, this is fucking perfect. Emailed him, and then he happened to be available on this day. And I want to welcome you to our group of crazy friends here, and that do a bunch of awesome decoding and are really smart, awesome content creators and researchers, and a group of just brilliant minds. And I'm gladly and warmly welcoming you, Tim. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for inviting me onto this discussion. I'm super stoked about it, and I was so glad that you reached out. I can't wait to get into the discussion. There's a lot to talk about with L. Frank Baum, The Wizard of Oz. There's other tangential kind of side stories to this that's just really amazing. So thanks so much for inviting me onto your show, and I can't wait to get into the discussion. This is going to be cool.
Nice. And then I'm not sure what the order is that you guys see on your screen. I'm in the middle top, which is strange for the hosty guy who started the meeting, but usually I'm on the top left. But I guess we'll just start right here. Mario, what's up, dude?
Hey man, not much. I'm happy to be here. This gave me an excuse to watch the movie again, and it's like truly one of my favorite films of all time. It still holds up. It's amazing, and there's a lot of things that I want to bring to the table that fits very nicely with Timothy's paper that I read last night, which is fantastic. So yeah, this is gonna be an interesting conversation.
Yes, awesome. It's fresh on your mind, man. Where do you do most of your work? Where can people find you, sir?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Symbolicstudies.com. You can find me there, and then I'm basically on all of the social media platforms too.
Nice. And then over here we have another beautiful man who you've heard us do multiple shows together. How are you doing, Gabe?
Wonderful, wonderful, homie Romie. Much love, brother.
Much
Yeah.
love.
I'm on Slick Dissident on YouTube. I'm also on the Weaving Spiders Welcome on Wednesdays and Saturdays all night long. And you can catch me at Interverse on Rockfin with Chance Garton.
Nice. And then we have with us the two pillars holding up the world. We have two awesome, fantastic women who are smart, amazing humans. And let's start with Rachel.
Well, thank you for having me. You can find me on Weaving Spiders, but I am also on Odin's Alchemy with Benjamin Balderson pretty frequently. So I'm on Telegram mostly, and I do post to Minds. So that's usually what I do.
Nice. And Kayleigh.
Last but certainly not least.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my name is Kayleigh. You can find most of my work either on YouTube. I do have a Telegram channel. Yeah, and I'm an astrologer, and I love this shit. You can find me on Spiders as well. And the last few Mondays, Rachel and I have been doing a just for fun kind of tarot astrology reading on Mondays. Yeah, we got a little rowdy yesterday, I'm not gonna lie.
Nice.
It was a really good time.
FRC?
It was fun.
Is that with legs that you do that with, or is it just you two?
No, just Rachel and I.
Oh, okay. I thought I saw FRC like font on a thing, and I thought maybe that was a collab. My bad.
That would be fun though.
Yeah, dude. Okay, so we're gonna get into this, guys. Obviously, we just did the round of itinerary of who all's here, and it's a full house. It's gonna be fucking great. But I want to go around one more time to kind of warm everybody up as to what the Wizard of Oz is, when maybe the first time you saw it, if it holds any sort of resonance to you, if it was a movie as a child, whatever the Wizard of Oz is to you. And let's kind of keep the same order. Let's start off with our guest today, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, of course, just like everyone else. I mean, I'm older than all of you, I think. And back when I was a kid, you know, we had like 4 TV stations. They would air The Wizard of Oz like once a year, and everybody would watch it, right? Because there was nothing else on TV, and everybody would talk about it at school the next day in the school bus. So it really became, you know, a part of the cultural fabric. I think it still does today. It's pretty amazing how it resonates. Then, of course, when I was older and getting into high school and college, everybody wanted to get stoned and watch The Wizard of Oz while listening to Pink Floyd and trying to match it up. And, you know, it's amazing to me. And then you kind of think about all the spinoffs and offshoots of The Wizard of Oz. Even most recently, I went to see Wicked on Broadway a few years ago. It's been running for quite a few years, but it's a story that really, almost like in an archetypal way, really resonates with people. I think that's why it endures. So you know, and then it's gained a new meaning for me after sort of doing my research paper. So yeah.
Beautiful. All right, Mario, what is the Wizard of Oz to you?
Yeah, great question. I grew up, probably like a lot of you guys, watching it. It was on TV all the time. I don't think we actually ever owned a copy, but I remember seeing it like over and over and over. But for 1 year during Halloween, I was actually the Tin Man. And I don't want to brag or anything, but I won like the best costume award like 3 years in a row, from like second to like, I don't know, 5th grade or something like that. And anyway, so when I look at it now, I see all of this elemental stuff going on in the film. And it really is kind of curious how the 4 main characters that are on the Yellow Brick Road correlate to the elements. And so when I see the Tin Man, I do think of water. I think of the cups from tarot. I think of Cancer, right? And his hard shell. And I'm a Cancer. So when I rewatched it, all that stuff just started like really clicking and resonating with me. And so I think it's very synchronistic that I was the Tin Man. And so I have a lot of Tin Man notes to talk about at some point today.
I mean, and that's awesome because he played such a huge role in the canon, and I didn't realize it until I started digging into it more. But apparently, he was he was the sideman to Scarecrow. I think Scarecrow ended up running the Emerald City afterwards.
I see. Interesting.
That's crazy though, man. There's some Cancerian vibes going on, and just magnetically kind of pulled to that. That's. Life is so mysterious. Gabe, what is Wizard of Oz to you, my brother?
I'm calling dibs on the lion.
Yep.
You better believe I'm going for the Leo position right out the gate. And I think it makes sense. Homie Romie should just be the scarecrow, man, working in the garden like you do. It just makes sense.
Hey, man, putrefaction. That's step number 1. Scarecrow all day.
So yeah, I definitely, seek out that holy trinity of the alchemical process and in all things that I see anymore. And so, I am really into the alchemical wisdom and its application and use in the artifact that we call language. And so that's something that I do a lot of is, pulling out those different elements and putting them in that their corresponding context. And one of the things that I'm definitely going to focus on today is the aspect of like prohibition and the patterns that the laws of prohibition have taken in relationship to removing us off of precious metals as a standard for fiat. You know, the first words in the Greek Bible, fiat lux, and that is, you know, let there be light kind of thing. But I have come to study law and appreciated that term lux in a whole new light. And fiat lux may pertain to the power of fiction in a very interesting way. So that's something else I'll be dealing with a lot, is the private and the public, the law and the alchemy of precious metals, and prohibition to alcohol and absinthe.
Beautiful. I love that. That's slick dissident, baby, all day. Classic. Rachel, what about you? What's the Wizard of Oz resonance with you?
I'm going to be quite contrarian today and admit
Good.
that it was not my favorite movie. I did grow up watching a lot of musicals, a lot of old movies. So from that perspective, I enjoyed it for what it was. And I'm also the little girl who thought Maleficent was pretty. So I'm more inclined to empathize with the darker aspects. And I think what I noticed in the movie was just the imbalance of light and dark, and the way that Hollywood portrays those types of things. So most of what my focus is on is how we tell our stories, where they come from, and what happens to us when we tell those stories. So, you know, kind of the magic behind the scenes is what fascinates me about it. And I did read the book before. I just speed read the book through before today, and just picked up on a lot of stuff because I was thinking about, you know, what people of the time would have thought having read this book, and then seeing it on screen and comparing, you know, what they might have considered as an American fairy tale. So I will speak a lot on my thoughts on that.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, dark undertones in the movie are scattered throughout. It's almost like the Macbeth of film, because there were so many iterations of it in film. There were so many iterations of it, and they were all doomed from the get. It's very interesting, and that's one of the fascinating conundrums I found while researching into this was, you know, Gabe and I were talking because Gabe and I actually did a decode demystification on this a while ago, and all of the audio got washed because, I don't know, when you do iterations of it, it's maybe doomed from the get, but not today. We have a powerhouse of light going on here, so I think we're gonna be okay. But yeah, it was hilarious. But yeah, we kind of we've been doing research on this for at least a few months now. And there, with the movie, there was like the guy who was the Tin Man, you know, got cancer from the paint that they were putting onto his skin. I believe the straw man caught on fire and like got like burned his lungs. And like there's the myth of like the hanging munchkin in the back on that one scene, which is up for debate, but I don't know. You know, during the time of Prohibition, or the idea of Prohibition, there's the alcohol theme there. So you know, everybody might have just been getting lit on behind the scenes too, you know, so that could add to a whole other level of spirit entry in that. And you know, I mean, we're dealing with magical beings here, and potentially some you know, I was doing some other research and found out that the OTO hall in Hollywood was actually opened up just a few years before this movie came out. So this might have been one of the first movies put through the real word of the law by the Thelemites, you know, and their influence into Hollywood, and putting coding and symbolization in there. So it's really fascinating. And sorry for the rant. Kayleigh, please inform us your goodness on this take.
It's all good, Romie. I appreciate your rants. Yeah, so growing up, I did watch Wizard of Oz a few times. I loved it. I will admit I did not read the book, but as we were coming up to today, and I was actually considering pulling back and not doing this, but then I had an inkling to look at the fixed stars in Frank's chart and in the charts of the book and the movie. And guess what fixed star shows up, Gabe?
I'll go.
Oh fuck yeah, it does, bud. So I couldn't
Yeah, bud.
I couldn't ignore that. The fact that Mercury is sitting right on top of Algol right now is gonna station to go retrograde any minute. We were talking about Algol. It keeps coming up. It's triggering an eclipse point from last year. I couldn't ignore it, and I would know that I would be kicking myself 2 hours from now if I didn't come in and talk about some of that stuff. So, yeah, I don't think that The Wizard of Oz had a huge impact on me. Yet at the same time, I can quote things from it, no problem, right? And we reference things from The Wizard of Oz all the time, tapping back into what Rachel was saying about the dark feminine, right? The flying monkeys that the narcissist sends out, and all of these other little themes that come up. So I've got I have a few kind of ways that I want to look at it. But some of those like astrological correspondences and the cycles that are lining up with like Great Reset stuff coming up that they're trying to shove down our throat right now. And as Gabe was talking about the fiat currency stuff, that definitely ties into it. So yeah, I don't know.
It's a lot, yeah.
It is a lot.
Well, I'm glad you came. I'm glad you decided to follow through, because we need you, dude. We need our court astrologer here.
Dude, I could not.
Awesome. And it was your idea to do it on this date. So
yeah, I was like, wait till after the new moon, please.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you guys so much. That was a lot of insight there, and I hope that resonates with some of our audience listening. I guess the most natural thing to do now is, I guess I should maybe say what it means to me or what have you.
Don't skip Rachel.
No, Rachel went.
Rachel's being contrarian, remember?
She's the
okay.
I think it's a good movie, but it's not my favorite.
That's right. Okay.
Well, quite frank, the movie scared the shit out of me, but there are a few things that really stuck out in it, like the yellow brick road obviously was a big one. Like, just I always remembered this kind of winding path, and it always spiraled. I grew up in the forest, so seeing the catkins on ferns, always loved that shape of spiral. And the conical symbolism in this is a lot too. They're really hitting hard home. They're really hitting hard home the cones and the cone head aspect. You have the funnel as a cone, you have the straw man hat as a cone, and then you have the aspect of the yellow brick road, which cones, it's
Right.
paralleled and horizontal to the ground, but the shape and the resonance of it is spiraling up, and it is this alchemical processes to travel towards enlightenment and this this reset into the root races and what is probably going to be an evolution into the next stage, which I think at the turn of the 19th, end of the 20th century, where you had so much going on, you had the age of spiritualism coming to rise, you had the age of technocrats also coming, you had like everything was propelling so fast after 1850 that there was so much coming to the scene, and lots of people were doing heavy energetic practices, and by that I mean there was massive amounts of secret societies, so much industrial revolution, people writing, doing seances, moving all around the country. And the thing is what I found out about being nomadic and traveling is that it heightens your auric field. Like, it heightens your consciousness. When you move, the more active you are, the more you are like putting your consciousness into the consciousness of the earth, and therefore expands everything all at once, and it encompasses it all. So the aspect of this travel on the yellow brick road as it conicalizes out, and it's fascinating, and it's this alchemical story, and I want to get into that. Timothy, can you tell us and tell the audience more about your paper and the research and work that you found during this, and what made you think about this alchemical story, and what was this, could you just tell us all the things, please, sir?
Absolutely. But first I have to comment on your fabulous banana shirt.
Yes. Okay, so I'm
That is
wearing this
cool.
in homage to the slippery slopes in which we constantly find ourselves in these thought processes. You know, it's like there's also, I love potassium and bananas, but thank you so much, Tim. Yeah, it's a slippery slope out
Absolutely.
there, so be careful.
Reminds me of my favorite Velvet Underground album. So love
Oh, I know that one. That's a good one.
it.
I'm gonna have to listen to that later.
So anyway, yeah, I write children's books, something sort of new, and I've been doing a lot of different things in my life and lots of different interests, like I'm sure all of you. And as I was writing a middle grade book. It's just about a boy who goes on this journey to try to find a bone marrow donor for his sister who has sickle cell disease. And anyway, I got this idea of really kind of creating an allegory on the 7 operations of alchemy. So just thought it would be kind of cool, something very below the surface, hidden, but for people who understand it would kind of recognize the Easter eggs that I throw in there, et cetera. So I spent a lot of time researching that. And while I was writing this book, I watched The Wizard of Oz with my daughter, and I saw it in a whole new way. And so I was recognizing these signs, and obviously the biggest one that hit me in the face was the Emerald City, hearkening to the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, right, which is sort of the source of alchemy. And so I was really curious about this, and I saw some other signs in there with the scarecrow and fire and calcination, and which is the first stage of alchemy. There's different forms of alchemy, but the one that I study is called Azoth alchemy, and it has 7 stages. But so I just was curious about it, right? And so I decided to read the book, which I had never read. And then when I read the book, the next day I got online, and it's available for free, in PDF, and read the book, and I saw even more. I was like, wow, like this is really interesting, and maybe there's something there. Not really sure. I didn't know anything about Frank Baum, nothing. I'm just like, okay, this is the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz. And as I started doing my research and reading about this guy, we can go into detail about it, but I discovered that he was a follower of Madame Blavatsky and was in the Theosophist Society. And I was like, well, holy shit, yeah, there you go, right? And so just started digging into it. And the more research I did, the more convinced I was that he certainly was familiar with alchemy. There could be other interpretations, right? I don't know if it was intentional, or it's one of those things where it's the subconscious, or it's just universal vibrations, who knows what, right? But certainly I don't think, and what's kind of funny about Frank Baum is that in the prologue of this book, he says, this is intended just to be a fairy tale. It's not about anything else. There's no hidden meanings, whatever. And he's full of shit. If you read some of the other things that he wrote, he clearly was trying to do something here with this book. So anyway, that's how I got into it. And my paper I wrote for the Rose Croix Journal, which is a publication, an academic publication that the Rosicrucian organization sponsors. And it explores Baum's life and makes the argument that The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is an allegory in alchemy, or representing alchemy.
So I noticed those things too, especially after I read your paper, and because I was thinking of it as an alchemical processes as well. And then when I read your paper, I was like, wow, this is fucking perfect. I mean, you said all the things that I could have ever wanted, to be said about the alchemical processes. And And yeah, I love the Septarian Azoth style too. It makes the most sense to me. Just those 7 steps, and the scarecrow being the crow's beak or the putrefaction, the calcination, like you said, and then going into the still, which is the 10 man, right? And then so on and so forth after that. And it's fascinating. And so after you wrote this paper, after you kind of had these revelations, what made you like what kind of conclusions did you come to as to maybe a why, or what the importance of Baum's work of doing that or if any at all? I mean, I know it's all speculation, obviously, but yeah, what was some conclusions you came to besides the entire paper that you wrote? That was the conclusion.
Again, as I put in my paper, I obviously can't know what he intended, right? It's just sort of speculation. I do think that there was a popular reading of The Wizard of Oz that I learned in high school, that it was an allegory on populism, on William Jennings Bryan and the gold standard, et cetera. And that is a possible reading. I'm not convinced that that's what Baum was after. I think he was after something much deeper, something more metaphysical. I think that there is a possibility. I mean, I'd love to talk about this at some point in the show. His mother-in-law was a famous suffragist, Matilda Joslyn Gage. She was a badass, and she got completely written out of history. And that's a really fascinating story. And lately, I know this is probably not answering your question, but just most recently, and after the last couple of years, what I'm really fascinated about is some of the historical stuff around it. For example, and I didn't see it, but as I was getting ready for this discussion today, that there is now an effort to cancel these books because Frank Baum was supposedly advocating for the genocide of Native Americans. And he did write some stuff. We can talk about that. I don't believe that that's what he meant. And I can talk about why that is. But what's interesting to me is, sort of what becomes the truth, right? Somebody says something, has an opinion, and somebody repeats it, and that sort of becomes the truth. And so, a sociologist in 1990 decided that Baum was not being ironic, and that became the truth. And so in a PBS special last year, they were talking about how Baum was a racist and et cetera. That's interesting to me. What's also interesting to me is how one of the most important female figures in American history got completely written out of history. And the Smithsonian, even 2 years ago, they did a 100-year anniversary of the women's suffrage movement. And one of the most important figures was not mentioned anywhere in their exhibit. So that's kind of, I know it's going off on a tangent, and I don't want to get away from the main discussion, but I think that's what I've sort of been focusing on, is like what becomes the truth, the standard truth, and why does it get perpetuated?
Anybody want to jump in on any of that stuff there?
Yeah, well, I want to point out that the Wicked Witch gets dissolved in the story. There is a female who is vilified and made like intentionally ugly. They didn't want her to be sexy. They wanted her to be scary and ugly. And she gets evaporated from existence, which I consider a louche. It's a louching metaphor. But go ahead, Rachel. What do you think?
Actually, I loved that part of your paper mentioning that with the feminism, because that's very apparent in the way that the story is told. But it's really subtle and beautiful, because it deviates quite a bit, in my opinion, from how fairy tales and folklore are traditionally written and their purpose. But I do appreciate that Dorothy is written with a mouth and some attitude, and she speaks, and that's what little girls need. And a lot of fairy tales, reflect that the culture of their time. You behave, you follow along. I mean, there are journeys that women go through in stories that help them develop into young women. And in this story, I appreciate that the American goal was to allow her to be. And that I liked that showed up here. It's funny that you say that about the witches, because it says in the book that, and even Glinda in the beginning of the movie, she's like, oh, good old, bad witches are all ugly. Bad witches are always ugly. And the East and the West witches were evil. So the North and the South witches were very beautiful and helpful. So I think that's an interesting thing, because it kind of reflects the light and dark side of the feminine as well. And so, with the Witch of the West, you have this, if we look at the Western civilization that came over here, there's the witch trials and this kind of condemnation of traditional medicines and things of that nature. I think we talked about this in a weave recently, with as far as the movie, and making her skin so green was kind of like the Green Man or the Green Woman. So kind of villainizing medicines of the West, continuing that trend in America, which I think is very fascinating. But I love that you brought that up about how impactful that woman was, and the fact that she's not remembered, which is interesting. I don't know what his other motivations were with writing some of this. Like I said, I don't know that it follows the way that stories are written, and we can get into some of that a little bit later. But I think it is, more about alchemy than most people would suspect. I would agree with that.
Including internal spiritual alchemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I found a lot of symbolism relating to this idea of the sacred center, which I relate to Northern symbolism. And so I think it's really interesting that Glinda, the Good Witch, one of the Good Witches, is from the North. And I was really intrigued that she had a star at the end of her wand. And I'm like, well, that just reminds me of the North Star, right? And so the North Star is Polaris, the pole star. Most people here have heard me talk about this multiple times, but they're traveling towards Oz, and this is the sacred center of that realm, right?
Yeah.
And I'm reading a book right now called At the Center of the World.
Oh.
And the subtitle is Polar Symbolism Discovered in Celtic, Norse, and Other Ritualized Landscapes.
Sick.
Yeah, it's fantastic, man. And so basically what this author is going through is this idea of a sacred center when it comes to cultural locations and regions and empires and things like that. And that it was really important to have this central location where people could meet. And actually, a lot of times they use this central location to delegate laws and to actually hold trials and stuff. And they would do it out in the open air. So there's this whole history about different peoples, different cultures acknowledging the sacred center of their location. And they would literally map it out on a map. And they're saying, this is the center of our country. So this is where we're going to conduct all of our business. And then everything kind of emanates out from there. So to me, it's really interesting that they were going towards the sacred center of Oz. And I think the metaphor is going towards your own personal sacred center, which is symbolic of the awareness of self, which is very much related to the personal alchemical thing. And one other thing I wanted to share along these lines, Tim, your paper was fantastic. So if people are interested in learning about the nuts and bolts of some of this alchemical symbolism, I really suggest they read your paper. And for each step, the 7 steps of the Azoth alchemical process, there's like a Latin name, I believe, right, that you included there. And it's Visita Interiora Terre Rectificando Invenis Occultum Lapidum, right? And I was waiting for it in your paper. I didn't know if you've come across this, but that actually creates an acronym, and the acronym is vitriol. And vitriol represents, it basically means visit the interior parts of the earth.
Holy shit.
Thou shalt find the hidden stone. And this is actually the Philosopher's Stone. And if you don't mind, I'll share my screen real quick. Is that cool?
Yeah. Oh, let me make sure.
Mario, you beautiful man.
Yeah, buddy. Going straight to the heart of the matter.
Nice. Okay, cool. Right. So if you look in Crowley's tarot deck, there's actually 2 very explicit references to rainbows. And in his one of his books, he says that rainbows have this connection or correspondence with Sagittarius. So you'll see here, this is the Eight of Wands, swiftness. You can see this very clear rainbow, 7 colors of the rainbow. Septenary symbolism is super deep, right? There's so many different aspects to it. But here you can see the Sagittarius arrow, and then here you can see Mercury, which there's so much mercurial symbolism in this film, it's completely nuts, right? But if you look at the major arcana card that corresponds with Sagittarius, it is the art card. And this actually creates a rainbow. I don't know if you guys can see it on your screen, but there's a rainbow going over this figure here. And then this arrow.
Sorry.
Go for it. No, please.
I was just noticed the white lion, the red bird, and the alchemical pot, and as they're making the stone there, and you got the double Janus face, or you know, there's just a lot. Yeah, that's wow.
Exactly. And so you have the arrow of Sagittarius coming out of the cauldron. It too makes a rainbow, right? You see around her shoulders. Yeah. And you'll notice that within the rainbow, it actually is vitriol when it's written out. So it says Visita Interiora Terra Rectificando Inventus Occultum, etc. And so literally that's what Crowley wrote within the rainbow here. Can you see now?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's all about this sacred center sort of concept, kind of going towards the heart of a matter, or going deeper within, or symbolically going to Oz, right?
Yes. And
are those bees on her shirt?
Yeah, they look like it.
They look like
well,
bees.
It could be that breastplate, that multiple mammaried breastplate of Kybel.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally.
So one thing that is really kind of a neat correspondence to this card is the beginning of MGM Studios movies has the lion roaring, and the lion is coming out of an occulted curtain. And there is a phrase above that that is it's like the coat of arms for MGM. It means art for art's sake. And this is the art card.
Wow.
That we're talking about. So this is definitely like the patroness of the big picture, I think.
Is this a Janus, or what is this? The two heads, is that like the inner and the outer, the exo and the eso, or what are we looking at here with the double head?
I think there's several ways, of looking at it. Yeah, so Janus, I think, is appropriate. Also, Sagittarius is the polarity of Gemini, right? And so it's the dualistic, polarized Gemini sort of archetypal stuff, I think, could be kind of interpreted that way too. But you know, it's really I think of solvang coagula, you know, you can only dissolve and or put things together, you know, so it's the polarity of things coming together, being pulled apart, which is basically the alchemical process. You know, the most simplest aspect of alchemy is bringing things together and pulling them apart.
Yeah
Could also be the king and queen.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
It's hermetic either way. And what I've been recently hearing more about the White Lion as I listen to like Roger Bacon and some of these other famous alchemists, it's representative of gold, of purity, and I don't know. Do you guys think that's a phoenix, or what is this bird here to you guys? I'm curious.
It looks more like an eagle to me, because I would assume eagles and lions as signs of royalty and dominance would appear in this deck a little bit more than something like a phoenix.
Yeah. Yes, you're probably right.
Because this particular card, and just so you all know, my approach to magic has been more shamanic, even though I'm interested in alchemy. So when I look at these things, you know, in my view, this card, the 14, feels more self-oriented rather than universe-oriented or actually connected. It's doing the process. But what I like about the original, you know, Temperance card is this idea that you're working with heaven and earth, bringing those things together. And this is a very internal process in contrast. So it does speak to that. And when you bring up NGM and art for art's sake, that's the Dadaist movement. that Dada was all about, oh, just art for art's sake. And if you have that mindset of art for art's sake, you're missing the heart of it all.
Right.
You're going to miss all the symbolism, and it gives other people license to put symbolism in, and you're going to wave it off. You will just accept the magic and you won't.
Right.
So that's
well, there's heaven and earth here too, you know, with the bird is a symbolization of closer to the heavens or into the sky realm, and then the grounding goodness of the white lion there. But I totally dig that that too.
One quick thing, Roman, I want to bring up on the that art for art's sake phrase.
Yeah.
This came up, I think, before, where there is actually the slightest alteration to that phrase gives it a really interesting meaning.
Oh.
And so it's, and I wish I had I could bring the visual up, but if you just pronounce the first, I think it's artis, if you just add a bounce of a syllable in the word, the whole phrase changes. I love to do this in Google Translate, find little twilight potentials of the same phrase, especially in Latin. If you ever use Google Translate in Latin, watch the phrase build up as you type it out, because Latin has this very interesting dynamic where if you only say half of the phrase, it means one thing. And if you only say the back half of the phrase, it means something else. So there's like riddles within riddles in the way Latin rolls out. You play with Google Translate, some really fun things come out. So it's like a pun. It's like a pun built into the language as it's constructed. So anyways, put an extra I in the first word, and the whole phrase turns into art for the sake of the altar.
Oh,
and
an extra I, you say?
Yeah, you put a third I, into the entire phrase, and you get alt for the sake of the altar. And that takes everything to a whole new meaning. And now Mr. Dobb is like a dead end. He's a cul-de-sac. And we've opened up another path to see this. So the altar, we all know about Hollywood and what altar.
Well, the MGM lion himself is what? Coming off of on an altar? In an altar? Is that not an altar right there? The whole MGM entry seat?
And I mean, let's not go down this road, but let's just mention we're being initiated with a cat in an occulted way. There's definitely some cat butt magic implied. Moving on.
Well, I want to touch on that too, actually, because something that got brought up the other day, and when we did a Florida breakdown, which was fucking next level. Everybody look out for the one-on-one podcast. We did a Florida demystification. We just went real deep with it, and it was so good. But it was brought to my attention that Sleeping Beauty or Snow White, sorry, one of the two was the first feature film full-length feature film cartoon from Disney. And that blew my mind because I started thinking about initiatory processes through the act of film. And that's exactly what The Wizard of Oz is. It is the first Technicolor film with new technology. Everything. It's an initiatory process. It's an initiatory story. And I recently started watching the new episode or the new season of Stranger Things because someone wants to do a breakdown on that, right? Like, just fucking, it never ends. But the thing about Stranger Things is that was Netflix original. It was the first Netflix original show. That's a straight up Montauk Project based show. It is based off of the Montauk Project, which is MK. Montauk is MK. I mean, it was literally the follow up of the MK Ultra after they moved to New York after, that whole story. You just look it up. And it's like, I'm noticing these threads and these cycles, this conical, cyclical situation and we find ourselves in with these initiatory stories of the first original thing that the studio puts out, and how much undertones of changing times, reset, the grasp of the psyche, the controlling of the moment. And yeah, it's super fascinating. And yeah, so let's. I know Mario, you just screen shared some stuff, but you are next on the docket. Do you want to kind of give us more of what you took away from looking into this, and kind of what your big revelation moment was, and what the fuck you found out about the Wizard of Oz, bro?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, the sacred center stuff, the northern symbolism thing, with the wand being the star, definitely wanted to hit on that. I did. The other thing is just mentioning that there's this curious pattern, right, where the four main characters appears though they're representing the four like basic elements. And so to me, Dorothy would be symbolic of Earth. In the court cards, the princess is related to Earth. The scarecrow is air. He wants a brain. He wants to think. Very symbolic of swords and all of that. The Tin Man is water. He wants a heart, symbolic of the cups and the emotions and everything else. The Cowardly Lion is fire. He wants his courage back. And so also too, I'll just share this real quick, because there's another curious thing in the Crowley deck. You have these four characters, and it's actually the four elements, but their heads are swapped with different bodies and then different legs. And so there's like 16 sort of like things kind of going on here. But it kind of looks like they're on a yellow brick road, if you ask me, and so look at that floor there. It's kind of curious, I think, these four characters on that yellow brick road potentially. And then the chariot obviously has a lot to do with traveling and moving forward and going on a journey or a quest or whatever. And so that was something that I wanted to point out. But regarding the Tin Man real quick, being water, he has this hard exterior, but soft interior. He got rusted because of water. He wants a heart. And then also his axe, right? So he uses his axe. He's a woodsman, so he uses it to chop down trees and what have you. And there's this curious relationship actually with Cancer, with its claws, having the ability to cut. And there's actually this esoteric correspondence between the crab's claws and them being symbolic of a saw. And so there's this sawtooth, saw, crab sort of thing that I think is interesting. And of course, you use a saw to cut wood. So to me, that correspondence is pretty clear. And then you even mentioned that the Tin Man, the actor, got cancer. That's kind of curious.
Yeah, that is super curious. Wow.
Full circle.
Yeah, it goes full circle. And then he's silver. And so I think of lunar symbolism and the moon and water. And he's also a vessel. He's empty. He hits himself, and then you just hear this empty sort of ring or tone or whatever. And so that's very much vessel sort of symbolism that's, again, related to Cancer and what have you.
And as I talked about in my paper, also the second stage of alchemy is dissolution, right? So you take the ashen material, you add water to it. It's all about water, and the metallurgic symbol for dissolution is tin. So it seems pretty clear.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I love that.
Nice.
That's cool.
One more layer to the Tin Man I'd love to just throw on is tax ID number. TIN, that's your tax ID number, which is a vessel, which is used for putting many things into your experience. Adding ingredients, we'll say. Sorry, Kayleigh.
I just think it's really interesting that tin is Jupiter for planetary correspondence, and Jupiter is exalted in the sign of Cancer.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
That was kind of interesting. To take it back to Sagittarius for a quick second, I notice with Sagittarius that it's right in line with the galactic center, speaking of center symbolism. And that's just another kind of theme that points to a similar kind of central thing for me. But, yeah. And before I read Tim's paper, I looked at those different elemental kind of things and interpreted as her going through the movie is just integrating these different aspects of self. So I think that's cool that we came to a similar place with that.
I'm gonna share a video here that is from the ending scene that kind of highlights a lot of what looked like the chariot card there that you just pulled up. Oh, you can't see it. It's terrible. Can you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the good witch is coming down here.
Oh yeah, she's riding on the placenta.
Right on that pink bubble, about to get bursted into the ether. Everybody's bowing because she's beautiful and just a magic princess. And right here. So right here, there's 2 of these. She just
Yes.
arrived on her chariot in the bubble.
That's
Nice.
it.
Walking through these 2. I mean, it's subtle, right? Like, just to put this in for just 2 seconds and to have that subtly there.
That's a Hecate's wheel. That's Hecate. That's 2 X's. That's Hecate's wheel.
Wow.
Big
I
time.
don't even know what that is. What's some of the story behind Hecate's wheel there?
Well, her name Hecate is the double crossing. She's kind of like a guardian of a threshold, and
Triple
apparently
moon goddess.
yes, and she's a guardian of the wild ones of the wilderness. Rachel, help me out. Back me
I'm
up,
not that
Rachel.
intimate with Hecate, sorry.
Oh, I always do that too.
okay. I appreciate it.
She would actually she's considered like Hermes, mercurial type archetypal energy would be Lord of the Crossroads, and she would be Lady of the Crossroads. So there's actually a lot of lunar symbolism that she's related to, and there's a lot of mercurial symbolism that she's related to, but more on the feminine side.
Nice.
Dogs, she's very much related to dogs as well, the barking of dogs. A lot of times you see her with that triple moon sort of iconography, the waxing full moon and the waning moon.
Yep. Oh, you know what else? Real quick. Oh, this is really interesting. I've just learned that she's associated with suffocation, and that probably in some erotic context, it's like really glorified to in a very far out crazy degree. But this is substantiated when you take the word suffocate apart. Soph and Hecate. Suffocate. So, in a really twisted way, this entire face mask ritual of the entire world was a bit of a suffocation ritual that may very well have been directed towards those who are giving Hecate way more energy than maybe they should.
Wow, that's crazy. And who's Hecate? That's the woman we were just talking about there.
Yeah, she's a kind of a dark feminine character, often associated with Lilith. I honestly, I think it all goes to Vatica, is like this she viper guardian of the underworld of the Vatican, the original Vatican energies.
The Isis.
Yeah, so it takes a real dark spin, at which point, we're kind of martyring the matriarch in a really creepy way. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of Hecate energy in very high places.
Wow. Well, let's Mario, are you good?
Yeah, I'm totally good for now. I mean, I have a lot of other random thoughts and insights or whatever, but the bulk of my material has been presented.
So I forgot to mention her coming out of the bubble.
Yeah,
has that holding your breath kind of aspect, that suffocation aspect. I wanted to point out, yeah, and even using a balloon later, to try to escape, also has that kind of component to it. And it's funny that she doesn't escape through the balloon, right? Toto lures her away from it, so it's almost like some people are using, metaphorically, people using auto asphyxiation as some sort of escape experience. It's like, no, that's not it either. That's not the way.
Well, there's that there's that little story or myth that Munchkin was getting hung
exactly
in the back.
Yes. It's got that crazy energy all throughout. So, but
yeah,
I'm done.
So I paused it here because I kind of wanted just to mention I just did my presentation on antiquated transhumanism with Chance the other day, and kind of the stuff that I bring up is, throughout history there's always crowns and scepters on the high royal marks of society, and also on not just the royal marks, but on the priest side, on the shamanistic side, on the prophetic side, and on the priest side and everything. And just like alchemy, you have to have all of the process. You have to have all the equipment to enact the magi. You have to, you need to know about it all, but you also have to have all of the equipment, right? You're not going to play a show without your amp. If you have your electric guitar, you have to have everything in order to make the magic of the resonance and the magic. So I think it's interesting that they put her in through the chariot, right? And then they give her the big, huge scepter, and they give her the crown, because she's the all-knowing. She's the magic. She's she's the witch of the north. And I just think that's funny, those associations. And then you look out, these guys both have their cone heads on, their cone hats, and they're in signs of power. I mean, in the canon of Oz, they both start running Oz after this situation, after he's out, after the evildoer is out, right? The guy hiding behind the cloth, the lion hiding behind the cloth, comes out and finds out that his big old fake head was nothing more than this facade of him acting bigger than he was, which is kind of like another moral of the stories happening here. But they ended up running it. And in the Disney depiction of the movie Return to Oz, which is very creepy and a lot of MK shit going on there in that film. I don't know if you guys have watched Return to Oz by Disney, done in 1985, but it's really good. And there's so much symbolism going on in that. I mean, it's Disney for sure. And talk about sorceric energies, like they really tap into it. But they which is also an iteration too. It was Return to Oz is, I think, one of the more final books within the series. And in that, they go through this whole process where the Tin Man and the Scarecrow were kind of like, they were running Oz for a bit. They were the head honchos, and then it gets taken over by this headless woman who has many different head figures that she puts on. She puts on all these different heads, and each head is a different energy. Anyways, I'm done with that rant. Let's go over
real quick,
Yes.
homie. This picture right here, actually, I see another tarot card is
Uh-oh.
popping up at me hardcore right now, guys.
Let's go.
Let's think about the
World.
High Priestess card right now with this picture. H.P. Blavatsky, High Priestess. Right now, PB. So we got HP and B. HP.
Oh,
and B.
here we go. Henry Palmer Plant, or
yes.
Yeah.
Now,
anyway, sorry.
I'm big on a PB code right now. It has to do with Taurus symbology and worshiping the bull and the beast and the 666 code. It's a whole rabbit hole. But the HP, let's focus on that even more. That's High Priestess. This is Blavatsky. She's a High Priestess. And if you look at the High Priestess card in the tarot deck, you'll see a lot of, you'll kind of see what we're looking at here. Is a goddess dressed in blue, and she's cherishing the Torah. And right now she's holding Toto. And what is really fascinating to me is the helmet, the hat that the witch has. That is much like a pomegranate, Rachel. That is just like the pomegranates that are floating around the High Priestess card. And the pomegranate is symbolic of the Torah, ritualistically. So there is a very powerful symbolic correspondence of the Torah, the pomegranates, her holding Toto right now, wearing blue. We're looking at a High Priestess card very clearly to me. And right now I'm trying to weave, this isn't really a sidetrack, but I just want to make it imprint it into timestamp it. Right now, I'm tracking a methodology of presidential cabinets that Abraham Lincoln started called a team of rivals. That's a T-O-R, Tor. Abraham Lincoln started the team of rivals methodology. And guess who picked it up last was Obama. Obama was carrying the T-O-R, the team of rivals method. And so what I think I'm seeing is some real heavy symbology to this High Priestess card holding the Torah. And strangely enough, I I'm out on a limb here, but I'm tying this to Obama's cabinet strategy in a very interesting way. I think you could expand that out. So I'm done. Just wanted to make that point. We got a High Priestess card, and it does relate to Obama in the craziest way.
Well, you're not done, because we're actually about to go to what you had fully taken away from the Wizard of Oz, because we're going keeping that same order. And like, I know there's a lot of things that you had, but like kind of one of the main takeaways that, and you brought it up earlier, you know, with the booze. So go into that for us, and then we'll continue on to Rachel and Kayleigh.
Well, that was a project I did a while back on the alchemical process and the numerical sequence of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all the amendments. And it turns out this is just there are many coincidences with alchemical process, the tarot deck, and the sequence of all of the amendments. And one real powerful one is that it was the 18th Amendment that gave us prohibition. And as a result of that, people were resulting to black market moonshine. And it is the 18th tarot card that is the moon card. And that is really interesting to me. The other one having to do with the 16th Amendment being taxes, and that being the Tower card. And there is a really intricate and elaborate weave to be done between the alchemical processes, the amendments, and the tarot. But that's something that kind of initiated my thinking into the fact that our law is an experiment. They are doing alchemical experimentation on society and the constructs that we observe in the name of being civil. So I know that's a long way around, but I've put together a few visual aids because what I think I've found is that Absinthe served as like a beta test, as a test run. If they could get us to give up Absinthe, this one thing, which is, like Rachel was saying, embodies that wisdom of the natural elements and mastery over those natural elements. Artemis, you know, that Artemis archetype of the wise woman who knows her way around the cauldron, you know. And if they could take that out, if we give them that inch, they could take the whole mile and remove alcohol as a result. And from there, they just went about trademarking and building our dependency on fossil fuel, you know, because if we have the ability to make our own alcohol, we could fuel our own vehicles. So it's a pretty, and it's interesting because Absinthe was 6 years ahead chronologically, was 6 years ahead of prohibition of all alcohol whatsoever. And so the temperance card, number 14, ties very powerfully into the prohibition movement because they called it temperance. It was the temperance movement. So here we are with Artemis again. And so they used absinthe and the removal of absinthe to pave the way to remove alcohol. So I'm going to try to share screen and just kind of show some of the, can you guys see this?
Yes, sir.
So this was kind of what really put everything together all at once, was realizing that this key ingredient to absinthe, this Artemisia, this is mugwort, which Mario's lovely partner blessed me up with some mugwort, and it gives amazing dreams. High therapeutic potential with the use of this ingredient, and it is the key ingredient that is in absinthe. This is where
I did not know that absinthe was made of mugwort. So it's they ferment it and then they still mugwort only, or what else? Are there other herbs in there?
There's a lot of other herbs in absinthe. It is actually a conglomeration of many powerful ingredients.
I'm getting me some of that.
It is, and it requires some beautiful ritual around it that involves a silver screen, and you use the silver screen to pour half a bit of water, and that releases the oils. As you pour the water over a bit of sugar, it releases oils. It's called lushing. And so what's amazing is that the silver screen, the adding of sugar and a little bit of water to release oils and loosh, that's what goes on in a movie theater today. And they made it inaccessible for people to openly have this ritual and this understanding of the alchemical process right around the time that they were going to release this movie into the movie theater and put everybody through a group looshing ritual.
Wow.
That's heavily encoded into a lot of Hollywood. I mean, that's pretty wild, man.
Right. And I mean, I just think of it as regulatory capture on the green ferry. You know, they just found everybody who's good at it and knows the process, and they put her on the black market. So they got, higher dividends. They can run it at a premium on the black market. So this is, you could see a couple green ferries of renown through here. This is actually the location where Aleister Crowley got pushed down the stairs from the Battle of the Blythe. Just an interesting image. But these are all from previous projects I've done, just corresponding this paving the way, this green gold and this temperance movement paving the way for prohibition. And then if they can take away your alcohol, they could take away your gold standard. Now you're on fiat, and it's all you're off into the realm of fiction. You're off in the wilderness. So that's what I got there.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot for people to chew on there. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
I kind of got a little bit distracted looking up Absinthe, and I'm done now. I'm done.
What's that, Ted?
He gave just one interesting sidebar as you're talking about this. We talked about Matilda Joslyn Gage. She was L. Frank Baum's mother-in-law. And as I mentioned, she was right there with Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton. She helped write the history of women's suffrage. She was a huge, huge figure. And what happened is, and she was, she actually, the women's suffrage movement, I think they were the National Women's Suffrage Association, got kind of taken, as they were talking about getting rights to vote for women, they merged with the Women Christian Temperance Union. And that was a conservative Christian group. And they were the ones that came in and they were talking about how, they had a belief that in the church and that men were superior to women. And Matilda Joslyn Gage would not have it. She was furious that the president of the Temperance Union was allowed to speak at one of their associations. So she quit in protest. And she ended up dying before Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. And because of her views, and she, by the way, also, because I wanted to bring this up when Rachel was talking about it, Matilda Joslyn Gage also, her magnum opus was called Women, Church, and State. And she talked about how the church has oppressed women for centuries. She brought up the Salem witch trial, and she said, if you replace the word woman for witch or witch for woman, you get what the church has been trying to do to women for centuries. And so I think it's just interesting, those two things, there's this temperance union that came in and obviously impacted Matilda Joslyn Gage. Frank Baum would have watched this, right? He would have read her book, and she really got pushed out of history because she took a stand against the church's treatment of women. And I just think that's interesting.
That is really interesting, and it's even more interesting that she got, or it isn't, because that's the entire point you brought up, but that she got written out of history. It's like time and time again, especially with the internet, and you brought it up earlier that L. Frank Baum himself is starting to get written out of history, right? They're trying to put a racist marker on him, which is kind of just nuts. I mean, the same thing happened to H.P. Blavatsky. A lot of people call her racist, because I think they don't understand her concept of the root races themselves.
Right.
And when you start to dig really deep into this occult and esoterica, we transcend beyond the modern understanding of everything. I mean, their understanding of races, they didn't even look at like, congressionalized race anymore. They were looking at like the ages and the zodiacal alignment and everything on a bigger, grander scale. And that's why I love doing these types of conversations, because through this and through the community that we're building and through all the things that we're doing, we are getting people to look past the current modernity and the societal engineering that has been placed upon us, to look deeper into the bigger cosmic collective. And it's so beautiful. And I do want to get back more into the whole feminine aspect once we get around this circle here, and we're almost there. But let's keep the pace going. I'm trying to be a good host and make sure everyone gets everything in. So Rachel, tell us, and thank you again, Timothy. You're fucking awesome. I love you. Rachel, let's go.
Thank you. And thank you, Timothy. I really enjoyed your paper. And I think you'll enjoy some of this, and I hope you'll input on it. So I noticed, I mean, of course, there are going to be a lot of differences between the book and the film, but I think that some of the things that they left out were really important. In all the time that they took to sing songs, they could have actually told the story. As much as I adore musicals, but I want to touch on the use of charms, magical items, the directions. I do want to speak really quickly on fairy tales. Baum wanted this to be an American fairy tale, but something that is very important in a lot of these old stories is that journeys to the other side are journeys between planes. So a cowardly lion in America might have been not an African lion. It might have been a panther or a lynx or a bobcat or something relative to the area that would have been unique. And, so to see this lion doesn't say American story. The references to some aspects of American culture are lovely when you read them, but they're for the most part, you can't tell it's an American story. And it does a good job of taking us somewhere we've never been. I think that's something that the movie does very well, because it's in color now, and it highlights this newness, this bright, vivid world. But around 1900 is when immigrants were coming here. This America was this new place. This was Oz. So, to have somebody, the movie makes it seem like Dorothy's trying to get out of Kansas, and it's just so drab, and she just, the witch, that's not in the book at all. You don't see this mirroring of characters. And I think that speaks to a lot of the alchemical stuff that's been put in to the movie. And in Hollywood, these mirrors, the process of self-integration, whereas it's actually a story about a great little girl who becomes more, and it's actually her presence in Oz that causes people to have better lives. All of the characters in the story are like, I would not have gotten brains if it weren't for you. I wouldn't have gotten a heart or courage. It's her presence that does all these things. It's inspirational. That's what a princess does, right? That's her job. It's not just like, oh, I'm pretty and whatever. She's a relationship point between what's high and what's low. So in that aspect, I think it kind of, it's a little too bad, but I think, it's still a fun movie, and it's still a fun story. It just tells a very different type of story. And it almost does him a disservice as allowing it to be an American story. He does it himself. Right. Because if he's into all this other stuff, he's not really looking at America. He's looking at all the stories of the past, which I think speak very highly to having lost his ancestry and his practices, because we had all these like burnings and everything.
Let me touch in on this just
Sure.
real quick. Okay, so I think also just to maybe clear a little bit of the air, because a lot of what you're saying is like a fucking 100%, and I find the same thing when I look up the story. Oh, Frank L. Baum was trying to write the next America's Most Great fairy tale, But you gotta also remember, this motherfucker was going into business. And so in order to get his book published, they told him the only way, maybe, or he knew about marketing, and he knew that the only way that he could get this esoteric story was to exoterically paint it as this thing. But also, man, the amulets and shit and the crystals and the glasses they had to wear. Why didn't they put that in the fucking movie? Ridiculous.
Right, because all of that, I mean, and that's stuff that I made notes about. So, you have things like, at one point there's field mice who help them out, pull them out of the poppies because they're falling asleep and you could die from that. So there's a whistle that they're given to call the mice again. There are magical items that signify help. From the Wicked Witch of the West, she actually gets a golden cap, and that's the cap that allows her to call the monkeys. The monkeys themselves are not evil as they're portrayed in the film. They just have to come whenever she calls, but it's only 3 times because this is a charm. You can only ask so many favors of your friends. There's the silver slippers, which are silver in the book, not so bright and shiny for the film. Those are ruby, and red is actually the color of the North. Or no, it's the South. The Good Witch of the South. Yes, thank you. And the green glasses, so, I mean, these are things that shift your perspective. There's probably a lot of stuff in the Emerald City that's actually green, but to give it a full effect and to really change people's eyes, everyone is required to wear these glasses. Everyone who enters the city, they're locked onto your head, so there's these magical items. And I think, that's important because it's a relationship with the material world, and it demonstrates the types of power we gain from knowing how something works. It's a symbol. The cap and the whistle, those are symbols for friendship and alliance. The glasses and the slippers, these are things that kind of remind you of your own power and your own perception, because Dorothy has no idea what the slippers do, right, till the very end. So I think that's all very, very interesting. And all the directions have a color. They all have a favorite color, which is, I think, where people are trying to get this race thing. But really, it's more tribal. People have favorite things, and we all conglomerate around each other because we've got that favorite thing in common. And I think as you get higher in your perception, that's why the idea of race and prejudice dissipates, because you start to realize that fractals tend to gravitate, frequencies gravitate, and it has nothing to do with skin color necessarily, but it's just, that's one of those things. So the East is blue, the West is yellow, South is the red. I didn't see where there was anything for the North, but that center is green for the heart, which I love. I like that. I like that they travel in a circle, it kind of starts down because it's from east. They start east. They have to go to the center, then they go west, then they go south, and North already helped him out. So there's already a connection there because the witch kisses her head and gives her protection. So North is the first one to help her out.
That's interesting, Rachel. That traces my addiction of Aries map.
Oh, that's cool. That might be fun to draw around here.
That's cool.
Yeah, and then with the items, it continues. That whole theme continues. Every one that they help gives them something. When they rescue, they go to the West and essentially kill the witch, which is a total accident and a fluke because she tries to steal the slippers. The people that live there are so happy that they help. They help prepare everyone, get everybody in good shape, but they also give them gifts. you know, a new golden axe blade. They give Dorothy a bracelet. I think they just give people things so that it's like a reward. It's almost like a level up, because you watch these characters develop. It's that alchemical process that you're talking about. I liked that your paper mentioned this, Tim, because it's like you can see from the get-go that they already have everything they need. And it's just about awakening more and more and more. And something that you did mention also was the golden path, which is what I study in the gene keys, is the golden path. And the illustration that I did that I incorporated this particular film on was for Capricorn, actually, where I'm going to move us from Sagittarius into Capricorn as the shadow aspects of that sign. And if you guys want, I can pull that up. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just touch on this really fast, because the whole thing is about synthesis, taking the shadow and turning it into something that you can use. It's something that's a gift. So I did have the 3 characters, and we kind of focus more on those in the movie. I feel like we forget about Dorothy a little bit when we talk about the film, even though she is the main character. So she's actually represented at the very bottom as the altar, which there's another nod to another movie here as the stone table with the lion being cowardly. And that's, you know, the tragedy Greek mask with Aslan and his haircut. So he's cowardly. He has no idea what his power is. Whereas, you know, in that film, of course, he does, which is why he makes that sacrifice. But all 3 of these characters, you know, give throughout the whole story. They demonstrate courage. They demonstrate having a heart. The Tin Man in the middle, kind of, you know, I mean, you think of soldiers and they don't have the same kind of heart as a warrior. And that's, you know, I think with the Tin Man, he's actually a woodman. And that's a big point. In the book, he's not called the Tin Man. He's just called a Tin Woodman. So it's more about who he is as his profession. And I just thought of, you know, in 300, he says, Spartans, what's your profession? You know, and this is their profession. So it's, you know, it's a little bit cold-hearted in the shadow aspect. And then at the top, you know, I made this during 2020. So the Scarecrow looks, you know, like a plague doctor, which is a lack of knowledge. You know, if we're only treating things with our concoctions and forgetting about nature, what knowledge have we actually gained? The shadows for Capricorn are dissatisfaction, struggle, greed, and psychosis. And, you know, psychosis is really just not knowing the truth about the world around you. And that's really what that is. So it's through going through this golden path that you come into self-realization and get out of that psychosis. But I did, you know, like I said, that's Capricorn. And we've learned everything. What we're looking about at all these symbols with Sagittarius, we're gaining the knowledge, we're gaining new insight, we're expanding, right? And we're probably leaving some things along the way. So with these shadows being Capricorn, this is time to build. I see Capricorn as the architect, putting the work in to build. So when we're talking about all the symbols, we're also talking about the kind of imprints that it leaves on humans and the kind of things and people we become that create this society. You know, what we're inclined to do, who we are inclined to align with. I think one of the first things that sounded like programming to me, like maybe very subtle, was when Dorothy meets the Scarecrow in the film. And he's like, oh, some people talk all day without brains. And that's, I'm sure people in the audience were like, yeah, that's true. Like, is it like, how many of those people probably don't have just as many brains? So, you know, there's, you know, interesting aspects with empathy there, but that's a lot of what I got.
That's funny. I was trying to look up the numbers of tarot cards, but I figured I'm in good circles of like, if I ask what's the 22nd tarot card or number 22, what is that?
It depends on how you're doing it, but it would essentially be the universe. You could almost make the case that it's the full two. But this movie actually begins with a lot of full energy. I saw a lot of air energy with the tornado and everything kind of going on. There was multiple references to like birds flying and things like that. But why do you ask?
Well, because in well, I don't want to. I want to touch on what Rachel brought up. And
Well,
said,
I'll just point out that TWWOO, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, is 22 condensed down into one acronym. TWWOO is 22, basically encoded. It's also a hoo hoo.
Well, it's why I bring it up is because I tried to send this video, or we put it in the group chat, and then I sent it specifically to Gabe, Rachel. I should have sent it out to everybody. I'm such a fucking
Janus
dummy.
ritual one?
Goodness. Yeah, the Janus ritual one, which I sent to Kayleigh a while ago. And these guys are big on gematria. They break down every word in the closing scene, every single word geometrically, and then they look at all the how much time language is used, because this is like, there's a lot of the consciousness and the dream aspect here, right? Going into the ether and, this twilighty type of like space-time travel. And so these guys break down a lot of the time language use in it. And I didn't realize it, and you don't realize it when you listen to something or watching something, because you're taking in so much sensory stuff that you're, like when things are being casted at you or spelled at you through word language, it's coming out so fast that you can really only take so much, especially when you're like working on understanding Twilight language. And yeah, so they basically did a great breakdown. I suggest everyone goes and watches it. I can't remember the name, but we'll post it in the show notes, maybe. But it's great. It's called the Janus Ritual, Wizard of Oz Breakdown, whatever. And the number 22 is everywhere, with the colors and the outfits that are even on and everything. And then I started looking into it. I was like, wow, there is a lot of 2-2 symbolism. And I'm like, wait, Toto. His name is 2-2. You just fucking broke down the acronym of the movie itself, or of the name itself. And so 22 is coming in a lot everywhere. It's also coming in relevance to the fact that it is fucking 2022. And so, there's so much interesting things that go in with this, and that's why I was wondering about the 22nd tarot card, and then maybe the 44th, and then maybe the 66th, and then also before that there's the 216 and the double 18 that comes in a lot, and that's specifically touching into a lot of what Sir Gabe has been doing, because when you talk about, he brought up something in a video that blew my fucking cat back, blew my noodles straight on the ground, lasagna noodles all over the walls. We had to clean it up. We had to order a maid service. It was nuts, and cost about $22. You know what I mean? And anyways, that Benjamin Franklin in the news, the North, the four watchmen, the North, East, West, South, right? And so how that correlates, and Gabe can tell us, or you guys can watch his videos, but you have the directions, you have the elements, you have the number 22, the number 216 tying in here. And did you find any correlations with that when breaking this down, Gabe, with your recent works that you did on your channel?
I was trying not to, but this thing is so large, I see it in everything I look at. It is a gigantic cornerstone of culture, this Benjamin Franklin's prime and this Belphegor's prime. But just to be quick and concise, Benjamin Franklin has a magical square. It's very enigmatic. It encodes the four directions, the four watchers, which are NEWS, which is the news. It also encodes two towers in a very interesting way. You'll have to come to my channel to see how. And I'll just point out one more very interesting fact is that I think it relates to the very first news broadcasting system and the towers that were used there. The very first Olympics were broadcast by the Nazis at the top of Mount Brocken. And Mount Brocken is a very sacred location. It was considered the meeting place of witches, much like the pole star is considered a hyperdimensional meeting place for the witches. Mount Brocken has that same legend going on. And on Mount Brocken, you can do this weird thing where you broadcast your shadow onto the clouds below. And you can stand up there and you look like a giant. And it's this weird, has this very strange effect on the culture of the community. So this called the Brocken Spectre. And it's depicted in Fantasia. There's a scene in Fantasia where the Mount Brocken Spectre becomes this devil. It's a very, very elaborate scene. But long story short, Carl Jung claimed to be related to Goethe, who wrote about Mount Brocken all the time. And so Carl Jung has his roots tied into this location where the first tower ever broadcast the Olympics in 1936, I think, I'm not sure. Which is part of the code, the 36.
Wow, yeah, that's nuts.
And so the whole history of broadcasting and getting information out to people is like this weird shadows in Plato's cave spell that originates with Mount Brocken and Benjamin Franklin's magical square.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Nice.
I wanted to chime in.
Go for it.
Rachel, I really liked your interpretation, your reading of the Wizard of Oz, and you mentioned something on planes, and I wanted to ask everybody's thoughts on this because we're talking about witches, right? We're talking about Northeast, Southwest. I kind of looked at it, and Dorothy comes in and she kills the Wicked Witch of the East, which East is birth, right? And she's come in. This is the beginning of her journey, is birth, and she has to go west, right? And she has to go defeat, which is death, right? She has to go. Well, we're talking about the physical plane, right? If we look at a crucifixion, the horizontal plane is physical, and you look at the witches of the North and the South are magical, right? And the witches of the East and West are evil. And so I kind of looked at it as this is, and the alchemical process, you've got the lower and the higher work, right? The lower work is the first 3 stages, the higher work is the last 3 stages, but really kind of a story about overcoming, the terror that is our physical existence. And she goes through, she goes on this journey and she goes through Oz, but she goes after she kills the witch of the West. Then, and I was really curious about sort of like the amulets and the things, the gifts that she gets to overcome that, to then understand what her latent power is within, which she doesn't really, realize until she goes back to Oz. And just one other thought on that is picking up on Baum, because I know you guys want to talk about the movie too, but just from the book's perspective, he did not want to have a story where the princess's, conclusion is to find the prince, right? He was very intentional that he wanted this girl to, that she can be, she can be a leader and she can help solve problems, and it's not about romance. And he was very intentional. I learned that in my research, and I thought that was really interesting. I think you picked up on that this is kind of a whole new princess that really didn't exist up until that time and in a significant way. So kind of interesting.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome.
I love that.
Rachel, anything?
Yeah, thank you. That made me think of Miyazaki and his films, because he had that same aim in his stories, was just the purity of friendship, the purity and the power of just relation. And I think when we talk about those planes, that's what we're talking about. Every single person ascends at their own rate. And so we get stuck with hierarchies moving up and down that North and South Pole. And then when we bump into each other on our fractals, that's where we have friction on that East and West. And so that's very easily seen as that good and evil dynamic. I think we've kind of swapped it to where it's like up here is good and down here is evil. But really, it's that friction that we get from bumping into each other on our different stages of our journey. So that's kind of my thought about that. But, and I could tie that into all kinds of different things, but
That's
So-
something to riff on that too.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, yes, Kayleigh, you are up. Let's get it going on all the things that you feel about life in general. Screw Wizard of Oz, man. Tell us what's really happening.
Oh, I'm planting a garden and it's friggin' sweet.
Nice.
Okay. Thank you for bringing it back to the east-west plane, Timothy, because there's something really important there that I related to astrology, of course. That's where my brain goes. When you're looking at any astrological chart, your own, ones for the movies, whatever, the houses are laid out in such a way where the eastern horizon shows you where the first house is and the 12th house. And the first house represents your body, your own physical vessel. And then the 7th house, which is the western horizon, exactly 180 degrees from it, shows the house of others and relationships. And I think it's really cool how she comes into the story, lands on the eastern house. There's the sun rising. There's your first house. There's like her coming into the story as the fool. Actually, I really
journey.
relate her to the fool with her dog Toto, who represents intuition and all that. Begins her fool's journey. And then she has to conquer the western horizon next. And for the standard princess story, we as in women get rescued by some prince, right? Well, this doesn't happen with her. She has to conquer that western house, the 7th house, first. And then when we look at the north and south on an astrological chart, they actually put north in the bottom of the chart, which is the 4th house, and then the 10th house is the south direction. So in order for us to rise in life and create a career or a name or a legacy for ourselves, which is symbolized by the 10th house, we have to first lay a strong foundation in the 4th house, which represents the private versus the public life. So I think just looking at it from that kind of perspective is really interesting. And then with kind of that, my brain on that kind of a track when I was looking at the charts for the movie and the book, and then Frank's chart, which we don't have a birth time for, which was really frustrating for me. But it's really cool how some of that symbolism comes up in the chart itself for the movie and the book. But Roman, when you sent me the video from I think their podcast is called The Open Scroll or something like that. About the Janus ritual.
Yes, not a podcast, by the way. They don't have a podcast platform, unfortunately. And I emailed them. I said, "Hey, you should do that."
Yeah. Okay. So I guess maybe they're just on BitChute or whatever. And they were talking about the gematria. I'm not huge in gematria, but 22 is a very interesting number. It doesn't come up in the charts. However, in astrology, there is one particular astrologer. His name was, because he has passed on now, his name was Nikola Stojanovic. He's a Serbian astrologer. And he had a unique degree theory that he put forth to the world with a whole bunch of chart proofs and whatnot. It's different from standard numerology. And the 22nd degree, he says, is the degree of assassinations and is actively involved when people are killed. So I thought that was very, very interesting that the 22 comes up, and I'm like, Nicola, what do you know? But yeah, so that is kind of just an interesting tie to 22 and something that's what pulled me in. I was like, 22, come again? Okay, let's look at this.
Because November 22nd, that's the JFK day.
Oh,
And
he
that's
definitely goes over JFK's chart in his book as well.
Yeah. And he had some serious Janus stuff going on because he and his brother were like two faces looking into two directions.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Okay. And then the other thing that I was thinking on, sorry, I had so many thoughts while I was waiting for my turn. I'm like, can't contain myself. Glenda, to me, really symbolizes just from the 7 basic planets, Venus. Venus often symbolizes orbs, right? She comes down in her bubble, and then she's got her 5-pointed star, which is very Venusian as well. 5 symbolizing or being tied to Venus. And there was a tie-in with Timothy's paper as well, and I'm forgetting it now. The step with copper.
Yeah, conjunction is the midway point, and that's connected with copper and Venus.
Nice. That's interesting. Yeah.
And where was the conjunction part in the story again?
It's actually Oz.
Oh, when she gets to Oz. Okay.
That seems about right.
Very interesting. Anyway, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's like the midway point, right?
Midway point.
That makes sense. Do you guys want me to open a chart?
Yeah, open a chart, and and while you're doing that, just talk more about the number 22. It ties into the concept of reset and time yet again, and it's dreamy. A lot of people can just hear the word 2 2s together, and it's just kind of a dreamy combo. 22 kind of has an alluring, kind of mystic vibe. I mean, to me, it does. And
yeah, absolutely, man.
You know what I mean? Like, what's up with that? Do you guys kind of feel that from that number?
There's 22 Hebrew letters, right? There's 22 major arcana cards. That's why the Fool could be the 22nd card if you want to look at it that way. And the Fool in the traditional Rider-Waite version, there is a small dog nipping at the heels of the Fool, and he's about to go off the cliff, seemingly. And I thought it was very, very interesting. I was noticing all of this air Fool symbolism in the beginning of the film. And they show Dorothy walking along the fence, and then she falls, which is very Fool-like.
Wow.
To have that kind of free fall sort of energy right there. So yeah, it's all there.
Totally. And that actually reminds me of a question that Roman posed to us, asking if we could compare Dorothy to Allison in The Wizard of Oz, where she falls and goes to another land. But yeah, I don't want anybody to freak out if they have like a planet or a house cusp at 22 degrees. That doesn't mean that you're gonna meet an untimely end or anything like that. It's very like specific circumstances when it comes up. So like, don't freak out if that's in your chart. It doesn't necessarily mean anything crazy.
I think of it as personal assassination and transformation.
Yeah.
Growth. You know what I mean?
Exactly. The time,
Totally.
it's a time switch. It's a time change. It's time to change. Which way do we go? Which direction is it? Which is funny. But what's up, Rachel?
Really quick with that, I want to throw in that what started happening with film is that a lot of these journeys start to become a psychosis or something that only happens in the mind, because if you remember in the film, she wakes up from hitting her head.
Oh, yeah.
And she didn't go anywhere, so, and that starts happening. Whereas in older tales, you are literally going to another place, and people know about this. They're like, oh, you went to the gray place with the fairies. Like, they know that this is something that can occur, and time is a factor. So I find it very fascinating that there's this switch into, no, it only happens up here. So just wanted to throw that in there with that 22.
Yeah, that's the dreams. That's the time to dream, dude. Apps of fruit, no, not fruit, all sweet, juicy fruit gravy coming on the hot sauce pot, concurrent with the, what we got, birth charts here? Let's look at them.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, you're done. You guys are hilarious. Okay, so like I said, we don't have a birth time for Frank. So what I did was I put his sun at high noon. And like I said in the beginning, his sun is conjunct the fixed star Algol. Now, right off the bat, Algol has some pretty gnarly connotations with it. I mean, I pulled up just one website that compiles a bunch of different things for Algol. And it's not a very nice star. Like, it's tied to Medusa, it's tied to alcohol. There's
Is there any tie with Al Gore?
Well, Al Ghul is where Algol comes from. So I mean, you put an R instead of an L, sure.
You could correspond it with Al Gore considering he went on a tour showing people horrific images of poor animals suffering, gory iconography to traumatize the masses, turn men to stone, circulate weaponized science and doubt.
Ooh,
Totally.
sweet. Al Gore for the win.
Yeah, so again, having one thing in a chart doesn't mean that a person embodies that energy or is going to meet any kind of untimely fate or anything like that. So I don't want anybody to freak out if you see, oh, my moon's conjunct Algol. Don't freak out. It doesn't necessarily mean anything bad. But that said, represents Medusa's head. And there's now with that story, okay, how does Medusa get turned into Medusa? What happens? There's a couple versions of the story. She is seduced or raped by Neptune and then is turned into this monstrous creature as a revenge from some goddess. So she's cursed. She's unjustly cursed to be this monster. She didn't ask for that fate. It was handed to her, right? So there's like just one little boom, there's some interesting feminine symbolism in there. And then, of course, she's beheaded, and then her head is used in order to free an entirely different woman, Andromeda, later, right? So there's both this like cursed kind of like losing your head demon symbolism with the star, and there's also a freeing yourself or freeing other people side of it as well, this protective side. It's also said to like help to turn back evil spells that are cast towards you back towards the other person, right? The reflective aspect of the shield. So a couple of really kind of interesting little tidbits with Algol there with Frank's sun conjunct that star. So that's neat. Couple of things right off the bat. He is very, very Venusian. His sun is in Taurus, ruled by Venus. His moon is in Libra, ruled by Venus. His other masculine planets, Mars being the main one, is also in Libra, ruled by Venus. So he is a very Venusian person.
Wow.
And then his Venus itself is in her own sign of Taurus, like in her in her domicile. So super, super Venusian individual. What I read about him that was kind of interesting was that he, just like H.P. Lovecraft, was very sickly when he was a child. So I was like,
What?
okay, he was very sickly, and him and his siblings were homeschooled. I also read that he went to a military academy for 2 years and was severely punished for daydreaming, and then ended up having some kind of a heart attack and was sent home. So I was like, whoa, that is some pretty intense daydreaming. And he has his son.
He went to Oz in his own
Yeah.
in his own head. Huh? That's wow. That's a
Yes.
trip. I didn't
Right?
see any of those details, dude. Nice dig.
Just a quick point. I think Carl Jung has kind of the same thing going on, and so does Edgar Casey, where there's like this
Prophets.
school trauma, then has to go home and becomes a prodigy in some other capacity. Very interesting.
Hey man, I got kicked out of school in 8th grade, so
Are you going to become the next prodigy, Rowan?
yep.
I believe it. Okay. So anyway, moving on. Something really cool about his chart, okay, is he has the sun conjunct Uranus. So that to me, they say that Uranus conjunct the sun brings like nervousness and like extreme, like there's so much energy coursing through the person's body and the mind because Uranus is this extremely like advanced and like it rules Aquarius, which is the nervous
Science.
system. It's science, exactly. It's science. It's advanced technology. It's also like ancient technology. It's a little bit of both. Like which came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. But having his sun right on Uranus, that's one of the things that could potentially increase somebody's nervousness and anxiety and that sickliness, but also grant somebody like the ability to have this incredible imagination because he sees with his consciousness, which is the sun, into all of these different realms. Uranus is also comes up often with themes of like, well, dark side Uranus and Aquarius is like communism, but on the positive side, it's rebellion against restriction. It's egalitarianism, humanitarianism, those kinds of things, which of course can turn really dark once you get hardcore into the collectivist side of things. So it's also like a really shocking energy. So I thought that was really, really cool to see that in his chart, in Taurus nonetheless. So he's Uranus has an 84-year cycle. So it's not like this is super rare, but it's interesting that we're back with Uranus and Taurus now, and we're talking about him and his work. So that's just a little bit about his sun. As far as like big feminist themes in his chart, they do come up, especially dealing with powerful feminine figures, because he's got... So I turned on a couple of asteroids. I normally don't use asteroids, but I don't have a birth time for him. So I was like, well, let's just see what comes up when I put these in here. So he's got his Venus here in Taurus, right? Right on top of Pluto. So Pluto is about power, control, sex, transformation, big themes. Having that right on top of your Venus, every time you're dealing with relationships, and because Venus rules both his sun and his moon, he's dealing personally with a lot of very transformative events all throughout his life. And anytime he forms a relationship, he's dealing with transformation and triggering these deep plutonic themes of inner alchemy. Let's just put it that way. That also says to me that like the women in his life had a lot of power, whether they were conscious of it or not, whether they used it to their own advantage. I don't know. I can only speculate. But I mean, considering he went and joined some secret societies and studied with Blavatsky, I mean, just I don't really need to say any more about that. And then these two asteroids right in between these outer planets here, this is Vesta and this is Pallas. Pallas comes up a lot when you're talking about themes of justice and like standing up for a cause, right? And then Vesta relates to the Vestal Virgins. It's being really dedicated to something. It's your home hearth and like having to sacrifice certain aspects of yourself or certain things that you want in order to really pursue a goal or a dream or a higher cause. That's Vesta. So he's got this huge fucking pile up in Taurus, which is values, which is money, which is fiat, but the five senses, really. Huge pile up of Taurus, huge pile up in Taurus, sorry. So I don't know, it just there's so much I could break down with this. The other thing about the feminine that comes up in his chart actually is Lilith. Lilith, as you guys are probably familiar with the themes of Lilith, very much a prominent point in charts of different feminist people that are prominent in those movements. Lilith, she has got this mythology of being like the first wife of Adam or whatever. There's a few different stories, but the gist of it is that it's this independent energy of I will not be chained, I will not be told what to do, I'm gonna do my thing, thank you very much, you don't control me, you don't own me, I'm gonna be over here, bye. And he's got Lilith. They're in different signs, but they're within 5 degrees of his Mars and then within 10 degrees of his moon, and moon represents both mom and just it's one of the feminine aspects of you. So he's got this very, very strong signature of like feminine empowerment and a very strong Venus signature throughout his whole chart, which is, I don't know, just really fascinating to me. So
That's awesome.
that's Frank's chart. Yeah, really fun. Oh yeah, one more thing, his nodes. So what was fascinating to me about his nodal placements, okay, so the north and south node of the moon, every planet has a node, by the way. The moon is the most common for us to use, and what the node means is where the ecliptic of the sun is. where the planet intersects with that ecliptic creates a node, right? It's a mathematically calculated point. It's not a planet. Just like Lilith, it's a mathematically calculated point. It's not a body. So anyway, the north and south node of the moon. The north node is where you're going, what you're aiming towards, what you're trying to build. The south node is where you've come from. His south node was in Libra, ruled by Venus, which shows that he's very, 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 very Venusian in nature. It's like he has a lot of experience doing the relationship thing. South Node Libra is like, in past lives, I have been solely devoted to being in a relationship and never developed my own self. What do I want? North Node in Aries is this life, you're going to be focusing on doing your own thing. Sometimes North Node Aries people are called selfish, but that's what they're supposed to be doing this life, is being selfish. The North Node Aries is also like you're building or bringing something into this world that's totally unique, totally new. It's never been done before. It's the first. It's very Aries energy. It's the first time this has been done. I'm the fastest and first to the table. So anyway, that's just a little bit about his chart that I saw that was interesting.
That's really cool, and it tracks pretty closely with his life, right? I mean, obviously, on the feminist side, not only his mother-in-law, but his wife also was very much in control, everything that I've read about their relationship. So he was certainly surrounded by, I would say, powerful women who, did what they wanted to do. And also, he moved around a lot. He had different jobs, and he was cynical. He was an editor for a newspaper in South Dakota, and he was very opinionated. So he kind of had that cynical, side to him also. And I think the comments that he made about, it was after the massacre at Wounded Knee, where he's basically like, we should just go ahead and exterminate the rest of them, obviously was very cynical. This is what I think is getting misinterpreted. But if you look at the entirety of his life and everything he believed in and the stories that he wrote, etc., this is something is not like the others, right? So I think it was pretty obvious that he was being cynical. But I also wanted to point out, because I listened to Rising, I think it was in Rising from the Ashes podcast, on Howdy McCoskey on World Fairs.
Mm-hmm.
And what's cool is, I was reading that. So Frank Baum moved to Chicago to be an editor there, and he covered the World Fair in Chicago, the Chicago World Fair. And I read a biography that basically this guy believed that Baum got a lot of his ideas from Oz at this World Fair, and that there are some themes here about the conquering of the West by white people, and this movement from pioneer days to industrialism. And so I think there's definitely in Oz some industrialism themes going on. So while I do believe that The Wonderful Wizard of Oz is mainly a esoteric, spiritual story, I think there are a lot of themes in there that are very political as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, because like she starts in the country where it's drab on the farm, and then she's drawn into the color, and the color is the city. It's that's the place where you can count on going to be drowned in colors, is the city with all the flashing lights and the neon. Yeah, that's very.
Sorry.
What's that?
every city has a color. It's saturated. Every single city is saturated.
Right.
And he makes a point when they go to these places of noting how these people are treated. Mm-hmm. In the East and the West, they're slaves, and they've been enslaved, and they're treated very, poorly. They have their own, yes, they're allowed to have their own color, but that's their state. And when you go to the North and the South, where the good witches are, they're very kind and they treat the people very well. So there's a lot more emphasis on the rulership rather than the people. Mm-hmm. And, you can, which is why at the beginning of your paper, that he was talking about populist and, this idea of the rulers being more central than the folks.
Yeah.
So that is very interesting.
And one thing I really like, Timothy, in your paper is that you really go into more of the book than the movie and bring out that contrast to what they, those little important aspects they missed in the movie. And I like how you point out how the golden road is constantly, you're being reminded that's the dominion of the witch, and that that gold is sourced from the green. And that correspondence is pretty powerful because there is a pure form of green that's called green gold. So that sourcing, hailing to the green origin, that's really powerful. That has a very interesting alchemical component. But it is also reflected in Baum's name, his last name, Baum. It has that hailing to the embalming process, which is Osiris is depicted in green. He's embalmed, he's wrapped in white all the time. And the name Baum has AU inside of it, which is the periodic symbol for gold. So even his name in Baum has that Osiris green necromantic component. And then there is a nugget of gold nestled in the middle of the word AU, which is just amazing how that is reflective of the witch's relationship to the gold road.
Wow, yeah, there's a lot of gold talk in there, and when you're talking about the Philosopher's Stone, like that makes a lot of sense, and I really do love that you guys all brought up and agree with like the directional points, and the east and west being more of like the physical realm, and the north and south kind of relating more towards the conscious and the dream realm, and that etherical type of conscious goop. Like it's something to that, because hailing back to powerful women and feminist occult, and just the creatrix vibes in general. H.P. Blavatsky. I mean, dude, my phone died. That's why my camera switched, which sucks because I had a sweet clip I wanted to play from the Lemurian Race. Is a book by Rudolf Steiner, but Rudolf Steiner and H.P. Blavatsky were peas in a pod, and great writers. I mean, and great philosophers. But anyways, it kind of just goes into this strong feminine aspect, and it's so crazy how the mysterious magnetism of life works. Like we talked a lot about zodiac here, and when you look into these archetypes of the different signs, and then you look at people's paths that they take and the journey that they take here, and they correlate, and it's like that we were reincarnated, we are this continuous beam of energy that chooses the directions that it takes. And the more awake and conscious that you become and create within this realm, then the more you go on that path that you were designated to take. And it, we forget it. I mean, like lately I've been kind of going in and on this thing with like, I'm big on the dream stuff right now. I'm big on the sleep and the consciousness, and I'm just like, wait, what the fuck really is it? And like some mornings I've been waking up recently and like really having to sit there and just be like, okay, so I'm here, I'm on the farm, I'm doing these things, because the sleep has been so fucking good that it's like the dreams have been so gnarly that I have to fucking remember who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing in life each morning. And so, there's the big, constellation correlation between our spirit and our physical selves. And I think that's a lot of what the story has to offer too, on top of the massive amounts of other things that this story has to relate to. And I see that a couple people, Gabe wants to share photos and stuff, and then Rachel has a tie for you. So let's wrap on that. Let's go.
Nice. Well, I wanted to kind of tie in, with now that I've seen Kayleigh's charts and how powerfully Taurus oriented he was.
Like, oh my God.
I feel compelled to fill in the BP of Blavatsky. We've kind of pointed out the HP, the High Priestess, and that's card number 2 in the tarot. And so she's also called like the Hierophantus or the Popess. She's like the female Pope. So I think I should probably lean into the other half of that component, which will be that Taurus aspect, the Hierophant aspect, which is also a component of her mantle, HPB. When we say her name, we are actually invoking a mantle. And the HP is the feminine, High Priestess aspect. And now we should maybe look at the PB and the Taurus and the Hierophant masculine aspect of that. So this is a very elaborate cipher that I've been on for a long time, and it is really hard to encapsulate and communicate concisely, but I will just say that it is a mathematical phenomenon that mathematicians are kind of cutesy about it. They're like, yeah, it's cute. It's the 666 code. It's all fun and games for them. But I see it as way more important than maybe they're letting on. So it's called Belphegor's Prime. And I have found that it is giving homage to the bull. Basically, this is bull worship. And this is why we have the bull on Wall Street. And it also, I believe, relates to the golden calf. And I also think it has to do with Jesus flipping the tables for the money changers, because they were putting this image of Hathor, this bull character, keeps coming and appearing on the money throughout history. And so I find it just really interesting, because what we just brought forward with Baum being so Taurus oriented in his birth chart. So I've put together this little graphic here. And there we go. So essentially, this numerical phenomenon, it has so many faces. It's just fascinating. But it has to do with how when you cube the number 6, you get the number 216, which is TAX. This is tax. This is channeling the energy of our collective consent, our collective civic duty. This is everybody's blood, sweat, and tears pools into this ink red bowl, the incredible bowl that is pretty much running the system behind the scenes, I think. But it is numerically encoded and venerated in so many ways. It's wild, but it has to do with Venus, as we are talking about Taurus, and the Hierophant, as Mario has pointed out, is steeped in 5-pointed star symbology. But part of this adventure for me started when I looked very closely at Benjamin Franklin's $100 bill, at this broken bell on the bills. So we're at a $100 bill, we're looking at a bell, and when I split the bell in half, just like the crack shows me to split it right down the middle, I split it in half and I switch the images left and right. And look at this, I found the bull. This is the bull on the bell on the bill. And it's incredible that all these things are so deeply encoded in the material that we use to build the construct we're in. This is the fabric of reality, so to say, that we're married to. So I look at the gematria for the word Taurus, and you get a 100 in the most simple cipher. You also get a combination of this 216 code I'm seeing with the 126, but there's 31s, quite a few 31s, which is interesting because this is its full expression, the Belphegor's Prime. This is the BP, Eleanor HPB, Helen Petrovanov Blavatsky, PB, right? it's 31 symbols long. The entire, this is its fullest expression right here. It's 31 symbols across. And so it is often encoded in 3 1s and also with 1 3s because it has 2 of these 13 zeroed wings. So this thing is put in plain sight in so many places. It's kind of wild. But one aspect I see here is you see that the ears of Hathor are fans. They're very fan-like. And Venus, the word fan and Venus go hand in hand. Well, this thing has these fans. It has these huge wings of 13 zeros on either side. So it also has this broad breadth of influence or expression, I guess. You could think of it as fans or wings on either side of it.
Like in a pillar aspect, like you got the legs there of Belphegor's legs, or the headdress of this character over here too.
Yeah.
You know? Wow.
So this is just a weird character that keeps coming up in many signs and symbols and mantles. And I just had to bring it forward since Kayleigh mentioned he's a Taurus in his Taurus energy. And apparently, you know, we are venerating the bull in our monetary systems, and we're suffering the bullshit as a result of it.
And the 216 comes up a lot in the gematria of the actual movie itself, outside of like because L. Frank wasn't a part of the movie making, right? It was based after his work, but to touch on more of the Belphegor's Prime stuff, you know, and to kind of the hail to the Thelemical, Oteisic, just making words up, you know, just like the Masonic, you know, fucking overlords that be that run Hollywood with the symbolism, and just to put it into the first movie with Technicolor and have it be an initiatory story, like I do find it relevant, especially since the numbers were correlating with Belphegor's Prime, and just so people also know. Belphegor, I had to look it up when I first heard Gabe talk about it, and it's the 7th sin. He's one of the 7 devils, like one of the 7 interpretations of like the devils, and so that's what Belphegor is as a character.
Yeah,
this is interesting.
That's awesome, and from there I can tie it into everything that I was going to say. So that's perfect.
Perfect.
When you mentioned Jesus flipping the tables of the money changers, what they're essentially doing is selling people their salvation, because that's what they were doing. They were like, oh, you need a dove for the sacrifice? We got one, you just have to buy it. Instead of you catching one yourself or raising it on your own, tapping into the urus. So this is Fehu. So with this golden path, you know, Goldveig, you know, you've got this obsession. However, in its most pure form, the gold is just a toy. You know, it's not the best alloy. We know this. It's very soft. It's not, you know, it does have a great reflection. It can be used, but it's malleable. It can be changed into different things like some metals can be. So walking the golden path is discovering your own value. And that's exactly what this story does. All these characters have incredible value. And I love what you brought up with his relationships, because that's apparent in the story. When you look in the book, I don't think the movie gave enough time to develop their connections, you know, because the Scarecrow tells his whole story of how he became a Scarecrow. He has these memories. The Tin Man has this story. You know, they all have these amazing stories that pull at her heart. And it's because of compassion and empathy that they stick with her and they develop friendships. So I want to take it into Taurus, our objects. And I want to hear your thoughts on the decisions to change these objects from what they were in the book to what they were in the movie, because I think those symbols are incredibly powerful. So with the Scarecrow and his brains, the Oz character gives him bran with pins and needles in it. And he fills his head with bran, pins, and needles. So he has brand new brains. It's clever. And, you know, they're kind of wondering, they're like, why the pins and needles? And the lion says, well, to show that he's sharp. He's quick, you know? I was like, that's cute.
Sharp as a tack.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that in the movie, it changes to a diploma. that's your sign of knowledge. Remember? Yeah, right. So you go through the system and now you have brains. Clever. So with the woodman, he's not really called the Tin Man. He's
Hey,
always
real quick, Rachel, not to stop you because I
Sure.
love it, but Gabe does have to go, and I
Gabe.
want him just to sign off properly. If so,
Nice.
yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. This has been awesome. Thank you very much for having me. I love everything we've laid down. I can't wait to watch the replay. This has been great.
Thanks, Gabe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Take
Let
care,
me
man.
let me know when we're ready for more. I love you guys.
Love you, man.
Love and
I'm gonna tune in
prosperity.
tonight, dude. It's gonna be sick.
All right. All right. Peace and respect.
Bye.
Ciao.
Okay, sorry about that, Rachel.
Oh,
I
no,
just
you're good.
okay,
We're
sweet.
just getting to the heart. Of course, our Leo's going to go. So in the story, he gets a silk heart that it does require him to be cut open so he can be given this, right? So he has to go through his own process of receiving this gift. They all have to go through something that changes their physical form. The scarecrow gets a new head. So, he's got this cutout and he's given a silk heart that has sawdust in it. He's a woodcutter. So sawdust is soft. He knows the smell of it. It's something very personal and dear that has to be kept inside. And in the movie, he's given a clock, a mechanical thing that tells the time. And what does that say about our emotions and what they're tied to? Is it tied to something that's near and dear to who we are? Or is it tied to something that is out of our control? And that's what brings us joy and sorrow. We've lost life. I ran out of time for this, or I don't have time for that. So it's a very different kind of gift, very different priorities, really. So the lion, it's so funny. Part I want to give to here because it ties into his whole thing with absinthe and prohibition, because Oz pulls out this green bottle. Everything's green in the Emerald City, so of course it's green, and the green liquid, and he pours it in a bowl, and he says this. He says, if it were liquid, it would, let's see, if it were inside of you, it would be courage. You know, of course, that courage is always inside of you. Therefore, I advise you to drink this as soon as possible.
What
He's already
straight up?
right. But if you think about what absinthe is, it's actually a medicine. It's herbs. And you can think about any herbal medicine. Your health is what gives you courage, right? The strength of your body, the strength of your character is tied in with your connection to the earth. That's what was really being taken away with these medicines, and abuse of medicine, really. When you look at alcohol, it's an abuse of medicine. So, I think that's very interesting. And what does he give him in the film? A medal. That's how you remember that you have courage, is a medal, an award. Good job. You have courage. You showed us. Instead of your character and your being, it radiates from you. And you can tell when you meet people like that, you're like, whoa, I want this person on my team. So I think that those are all very interesting decisions as far as, change and symbols and the kind of messages that they're putting out on what we value.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that you picked that up. That never crossed my mind. I've seen the movie a million times and read the book. That's a really cool and also kind of sad interpretation, right?
Yeah, thank you for bringing all that up. That's awesome. I completely forgot about the clock, right? And so I think of the beating of the heart, right? I think of inner cycles, outer cycles. I think of these rhythms of life, and then also too, I brought up the Chariot card. And so it's ruled or corresponds with Cancer. And with that card, we're dealing with cycles, right? And so we're dealing with the movement of the wheels of heaven and everything else. And so to me, the symbolism, when I saw the clock again, watching the movie, I was like, dude, this is so perfect. Oh my God, I love that. And so I didn't write it down. So I'm really glad you brought that up because that's brilliant.
Nicely woven, Rachel.
Yeah, thank you.
Speaking of clocks.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Speaking of clocks and time and Saturn, because Saturn rules time and clocks. I was thinking about just some of the other planetary correspondences to the characters. And I thought I was puzzling over why the Scarecrow was related to Saturn, because he's the first step, right? Calcination, which is lead, which is Saturn. And he's looking for brains. Well, Saturn is exalted in the sign of Libra, an air sign. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I was like, hey, wait a minute. And then I already talked about Jupiter in Cancer and the Tin Man. But then with the lion and courage and him being
Separation, iron.
yeah, oh, he's iron. Okay, so he's Mars. Okay, interesting. Okay, so yeah, iron, Mars, that's exalted in the sign of Capricorn. I would have assumed that he would have been tied to Leo, but nope, Capricorn, Mars. So anyway, I thought that's interesting. Yeah, that's all I had on that.
Yeah,
Nice.
no, I think as I went through the different stages, and I thought there was some pretty close correlations. The one that had the least correlation, in my opinion, was actually the lion to the separation stage. And the only thing that I could find that I thought tied into is the separation stage is you have the materials, they're not joined yet. So you're separate, and the symbology a lot is like birds like pecking at something to take out the good, separating the good from the bad, basically.
Right.
But through that process takes a lot of willpower and determination and effort and courage. And so that was something that I connected there. But yeah, I mean, beyond that, normally in alchemy, when you think of the lion, right, you're thinking of the sulfur. He's, it's usually the green lion. So interesting. Yeah, I was looking for a closer connection there, and I didn't really find it. So
The green lion is sulfur, you say? That's interesting, because in the book, Rachel just told us that he gets the green liquid. Neat.
right.
Very neat.
Gabe, you're back.
Yeah, I got an extension.
Nice.
Yay.
Nice.
Right on. That's awesome.
Carry on as you were.
Those clocks are amazing, dude. And so the last thing I'll just say about clocks and time and things of that sort is that, Tim's article was about the 7-stepped alchemical process, right? Azoth alchemy. And there's just a lot of mythology about 7 steps or 7 veils or 7 spheres, whatever, but 7 different things from one thing to the other. So between us and the heavens, I've read a lot of stuff about various afterlife sort of rituals and what have you, that it takes 7 different steps to go to the other side, essentially. 7 different things that are oftentimes related to either the 7 planets, right? And then also Ursa Major having 7 stars. And so 7 in terms of it being an alchemical number and just different processes that change and move along, they're just like that, they're completely integrated, which is why, again, the Chariot card that I've talked about a few times now, it's number 7, and I think that too, I think this is partly why the Masons use the G a lot. I do think, Gabe, I know you've put forth the 3G thing, which I think makes total sense, but it's also the 7th letter too. And so I think it has to do with rhythm and these different processes and what have you. So it's in alchemy, it's all over the place. Mythology.
And the thing about the number or the letters and the numbers too is like, they're given their order, and G is 7 with that, but there's also all these correlations that the numbers tie into each other at some point along their journey. And so it's just that's just that's the continuous mysteries, right, that are just you can plug them just everywhere. And so it's wild, it's beautiful. I thought maybe we could do one final go around, like in order, and maybe kind of aim the question, like I was thinking maybe what is your interpretation on Oz, whether a time in space-time and the period of time itself, of the ages, of the root races, that kind of like time,
that I mean, because he was a study of theosophy, or if it's a conscious thing, if Oz is the alchemical heaven, if you will, or if there's a physical place here on Earth, now, like, some people say that, New York is just one letter off on each. So he's talking about some place in New York, or is it Kansas, or what's up with Kansas? Just that kind of realm. What the fuck do you think Oz is, and what he meant it to be, and maybe what Oz is to you, in a way that you can take away from Oz to maybe go to the Emerald City and all of that kind of stuff, and any other kind of like last minute things you guys want to bring up as we go around the circle here, starting with Timothy, my man.
Put me on the spot first.
Yes. Or
So
you want to finish it off?
No, I'm good. I think that for me, it's mainly a spiritual journey. It's our life, right? It's our journey, I would say, more than just spiritual journey, because there's a physical and spiritual aspect to it, right? And that's with alchemy. It's not one or the other; it's both. I think about we were talking about the scarecrow and the Tin Woodman and the lion, and that's also from a philosophical perspective. That's right thinking, right feeling, and right action. And so, and you have to go through that journey, right? There's a part at the end where the Glinda is saying you had the ability to go home the whole time, and all you had to do was, with the slippers. And she said, yes, but if I hadn't gone on this journey, that the scarecrow wouldn't have gotten his brain, the Tin Woodsman would not have gotten his heart, and the lion wouldn't have found courage. And so for me, this story really is about, we have to suffer in this world. We have to go on a journey. We don't get the Philosopher's Stone easily. It's something that, and we have to go through it. It's a personal thing, and we have to go through it ourselves, and we can't learn from somebody else. And that's also where the wizard is. The wizard is a humbug. And really it's about, the only teacher that is not a humbug is the teacher within. And we can follow people, and we can follow different philosophies, but really at the end of the day, there's nothing that we can get from external sources that will solve anything for us. We kind of have to put in the work, and that's what alchemy is all about. And that's what I see this story as being about, is we have to go on that journey in order to get the Philosopher's Stone, in order to turn lead into gold, in order, to become integrated with ourselves again.
Wow. Yeah. That's deep. But that's what this story is. It's so deep. It's insane. I'm gonna take a lot of this stuff today and re-listen to it. I'm gonna make a song with everybody saying stuff and make some music, and I'm gonna really soak in all the beautiful greatness you guys have brought to the table today. I really appreciate it. Yet again, thank you, Tim. That was fucking awesome. And I'm hoping to get you on again, just one-on-one, talk about just Rosicrucianism in general. I think that'd be cool. Anywho, let's go over here because my order, I see Rachel over here. You wanna go where Oz is and was and has been?
Sure. To me, it is another plane, a trip to another plane. It is something that gives you a vision for your life, because now that she's gone through that, I would hope that Dorothy understands her impact on the world, because that's essentially what she learns is, like I said before, her presence. And that's what most of these trips to the other world do. The other world calls you to fulfill a task. And I think in the Mabinogi, that's like one of the very first stories, is this character, this king, these two kings switch places. So they take turns ruling, and you learn through experience, and then you take those lessons back and you live your life. So I think it's more of a vision for your life in that sense, like kind of like a spirit journey.
That's cool. Yeah, and I love that concept. Can you say the name of that, the king switching again? Where does that
Oh,
come from?
it's from the Mabinogi. It's a Welsh document.
Cool.
I can't remember the name of the king at the moment. It starts with the P. I'll find it.
Was that a normal practice that happened, or was that just kind
It
of
was
a
not
one story?
it was not unusual for people to interact with the gray people of the other world.
Yeah.
Even the Celtic hero Cuchulainn gets called to the other side. They're like, we want him to fight our battles. So, it's not unusual.
Kind of reminds me of the Strangers thing that we're watching right now with L11. She's like, she has to go fight the battle, even though her other friends that don't have these powers, like, she has to do it, even though she wants to, but also she's just like, wow, it's a lot of pressure, dude. That's cool. I love there's so much to dig into with the Welsh and the Celtic, like druidry and everything, and that whole northern mythos. Like, there's a lot of stuff there that is far from the common gnosis, if you will. So great. Always, I love that you bring that shit to the table. I almost said stuff, and then I said and then I went back and I was just like, I'll just say it. We're all adults here. Anyways, Kayleigh, what's
It's
up?
your podcast. You can do what you want.
There we go.
Oh, I'm so stoked I'm not last. Yes.
We'll make Gabe go last since he played with our emotions.
That's okay. I resonate quite strongly with what Tim was saying about it being basically a journey through the dark night of the soul, right? And it's not quite, it's more like a bright night of the soul for Dorothy with the Technicolor stuff, but that is a very necessary process. Like, disillusionment is absolutely necessary on the journey towards awakening. I'm disillusioned right now. Like, it happens a lot, and it's not just like a once and done kind of thing. It's a repeated process that you end up doing multiple times. But to me, that's what Oz represents. This is the journey that I've gone on, and these are the different stages of that journey, and this is me trying to integrate everything. And yeah, that's it's the fool's journey, really. So that's what I think about it.
Yeah. Journeys, man. Conical golden roads. And the bright night of the soul. I like that because
Yeah.
the dark is the
Technicolor.
light. Yeah, it's all shadows are light in some way. Let's go on to Mario, sir. How are you doing, bud?
Oh, I am solid, dude. Yeah, I'm echoing some of the same sentiments as you guys have put forth. I'll share my screen real quick, but I call it the sacred center, and I think it's emanated in a lot of different ways. Oz is symbolic of the sacred center. You look at any petroglyph, right, with a spiral or any spiraled artwork, you're going towards the sacred center. It's Mount Meru, the sacred center. Look how it ascends to the heavens. The sacred center is always the point in which you travel between realms. It's the bridge between places, and that you can access it from going inward and tapping in. It's Yggdrasil, same thing, sacred center spot right here, upper realms going to the lower realms. Even Atlantis, Plato's interpretation of it, you got these concentric rings, sacred center. So in a way, it's the Holy of Holies. In a lot of older depictions of Earth, right, you have the four rivers that emanate from the north, which would be the sacred center of Earth. So there's always this four kind of correspondence that comes along when you think about this kind of stuff. It's the center of the toroid too, right? And I believe we live in a nested toroidal system, and there's a correspondence with the toroid and ourselves and our hearts. And then also it's the circumpunct, which is the symbol for the sun. And so it's the dot within the circle from which everything emanates. So that's what I think ultimately Oz represents in so many different ways. I love this concept, and I love that Tim emphasized this in his article about going towards the center, because that's not really, they don't say that this is the center necessarily. I don't believe in the movie, but I'm sure they do in the book. But it's a really, really important thing to kind of consider. So those are my thoughts.
Boom. Yeah, I really liked the first image, or maybe it was the second one that you did with the Mount Meru. Oh, I think it was the second. And it kind of it kind of showed a lot of what we were talking about. It had the 4 different colors, right, associated with the directions and or the elements there, and then you had the central, city, right, or the central mountain, and from that, yeah, that's fucking awesome. Let's see, Gabe, what's up, dude? Where is Oz?
Mario stole my answer, bro.
What a jerk.
Yeah, I'm totally seeing it eye to eye with you, Mario. That sacred center. I have one last screen share I'd love to bring up. So there's a sacred center I talk about a lot. It's the placenta. It's the placenta. And when she goes home, she receives a placenta crown. She gets the sacred cloth, the sacred covenant, the sacred agreement, the sack red calling of the higher calling. She gets the placenta crown when she comes back to her bed, her kalma. The kalma means bed. She is in the calm of her mother's presence. This is her mother's hand putting the placenta on her head. So I take that center place to many weird locations and concepts and levels, but I think it's beautiful that Mario was bringing exactly the same image as I did here. Like this is her clicking her heels here. You see the concentric rings.
Yeah.
That is what you will see with a still shutter image of the North Pole. Very powerful.
Yep, exactly.
So yeah, back in the days, the term wonder and marvel, those were incredibly magical words, and even amazing. And here we are in the maze of these concentric rings, of these rites of passage that are all about ascension and rising to that higher center point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just thought I'd pull this one up because I see all these aspects of the emanations, which are in fact jurisdictions of law. I believe that the emanations are where magic and law come together in a very powerful way. When you look up emanations in legal systems, you will find out that you are looking at the bridge between lawful systems and magic, in fact. So I just wanted to share that image and also point out, for me, the word Oz, it means goats, it means strength, it means the O in the X, hugs and kisses. It's definitely a Hecate thing, but furthermore, and even more substantially, is the awe. This is all of the awe and the marvel and the wandering and the admiration, all of which goes into the concept of louche, which in reverse is the word school. So it is a lesson that will be taught. That lesson will be taught in perpetuity. It is its own perennial wisdom. But I think it's very valuable and important that we think about the louche and the ritual of the absinthe process and its meaning in the alchemical spell that was the Wizard of Oz.
Nice, dude. I'll add one thing real quick. A lot of labyrinths have 7 layers from outer to inner, which I think is interesting.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, so there's something else too with the so we have the 4 witches, right? And we talked about the lateral directions. But a lot of the theosophical work, or what H.P. Blavatsky put into The Secret Doctrine and Isis Revealed, which are some of the greatest fucking books of all time. I mean, let's just be honest with each other. I mean, they're just next fucking level, and I'm working my way through them. I'm trudging through them, but she is such a high priestess to me. Like I really love Blavatsky's work. Like I have to take so many notes when I listen to it on audio from our buddy Graham Dunlop over at Grimerica. He has Adult Brain audiobooks. You guys can find on Audible. I'm plugging it because I love those guys, and the fact that he sat down and did the Cosmogenesis book, which is a 24-hour literature audio read, right? So he deserves a fucking shout out. Anyways, so that's what I see, and what Oz is to me is a lot of what you guys said. It's a journey, but I think it's L. Frank Baum's magnum opus. It was his chance, his shining chance to create a world where he could have all the root races together in one. And it's this trip to the consciousness, this trip to the collective consciousness, where in there you get to see all of your relatives, you get to see your true self, you get to understand your true heightened power, you get to watch the rise and fall of things around you and yourself as your alchemical spiritual journey happens. And I get a lot of Lemurian vibes from it, and what we would consider to be Atlantean and Lemurian vibes, which H.P. Blavatsky was big about. She basically has some of the most descriptive information on Lemuria, like she just does, and so who else? Well, the Vedas, right? I mean, that's where we get a lot of that, and that's where she got a lot of her studies, was from ancient Vedic text, and it's absolutely amazing. So there's the labyrinth goodness, which is absolutely no doubt, the whirling dervishes spinning, and that spinning aspect, and tapping into the consciousness, and that golden circle, that golden spiral, that golden move, that alchemical journey to align your spirit with the universe and align your spirit with the cosmos. And then you get to have the Oz, it's like, yeah, dude, this is such a good story. I'm going to get a box set of the books. There's some weird shit though, I will say, like the one cover of the one book, I have it somewhere, actually. Let me try to find it. It is Dorothy sitting on the shoulders of the two Tin Woodsmen, and she's grabbing their funnel noses like this. She's sitting,
Scandalous.
huh?
Scandalous.
It is scandalous. It
A
is
little
scandalous.
suggestive.
It's so weird, I thought. But yeah, I suggest everybody take a little bit of time to look more into this, and to check out Tim's work. Check out and check out the books. Like, everybody get these books and let us know what you think. Okay, here we go. I was just kind of saying filler words until I found this picture. Look at that.
We're not seeing it.
You're not seeing it?
We
just
see the
seeing the
files that you clicked
folder.
on, but we're not seeing the
Oh,
full
I
screen.
see what happened, because I did stop share, and then I did screen share, desktop. Here we go. Desktop. Okay. Here, check it out.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know. I just thought that was kind of like, kind of strange. I was like, why are you stroking these strange, goofy looking Tin Men's noses? That's not, you shouldn't be doing that. But hey, she's the witch of the South, so she can do whatever she pleases. And through that, if anybody has anything else to say, anyone to plug anything, any last minute yahoos, woo-haws, choo-choos, chi-chows.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much for letting me join this discussion. Thank you for reading my paper. It really means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. And I love the discussion today. I learned so much, from you guys. So I'm just like, my brain is exploded right now. But just no, I love it. I love it. And I actually am really thrilled that I got a chance from Roman. Thanks for reaching out to me, because it opened up a whole new world for me too on the stuff that you guys are doing. So I'm super stoked about digging into more and listening to your podcast. So thanks so much for this. This has been a thrill for me.
Pleasure to have you. And like I said, I would love to get you on again and talk Francis Bacon and Rosicrucianism, and kind of dig more into that history, because I know I have some opinions on Francis Bacon, you know, and so did Manly P. Hall. So, you know, like it's really interesting. Anybody else? Anything?
Well, I want to thank Timothy very much. For one, it's great to have you, man.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing your paperwork with us. It's a treasure for sure.
Thank you.
And you're my first Rosicrucian I've ever met. So that was a first. I feel initiated.
Hopefully we didn't let you down.
Oh no, this is great. You know, one thing I love to point out is Rosicrucian, that's the original 93. The RC is the original 93. And you know, Crowley, everybody points to Crowley when they hear the 93, but it predates him by hundreds of years. So I'm glad you're carrying those traditions. That's great.
Awesome.
Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you, Timothy, for being with us and for your paper and sharing that with us, because it was very, it was really enlightening and it was very inspiring, and I liked it a lot.
Ooh,
So,
thank you.
about the only thing that I have upcoming is for Twilight Reading Hour on Thursdays. I'm going to be reading German New Medicine. That one has won the poll. So
Nice.
Nice.
That's awesome.
We'll be
Very
reading
cool.
that until it's done.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to say thanks to Tim too for coming and bestowing some of his information on us. That article really was great. So people, if they're interested in this, they should definitely check it out. And then that reminds me too, the Rosy Cross. That's another sacred center symbol. You know, the rose right in the middle of the crossroads, center, where the four directions emanate from, and all that kind of stuff. So
Yes.
it's all over the place.
Fucking A.
And thanks, homie Romie, for having me and having us. This was really cool. I would not have, had my mind tuned into the Wizard of Oz right now if it weren't for you. And I'm glad it is in this moment. It's a great story, and I had a really good time watching it again. Real quick, actually, one quick hanging chad. The production's amazing. I really got the sense that the actors had like a family sort of vibe with everything, and so, which I never noticed as a kid. And then also there are some good one-liners in there too that are really funny. It kind of reminded me of like Monty Python-ish type humor or whatever. So I really want to know more about the cast and crew and actually the production and stuff behind it. So I think I'm gonna look into that next.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely do more Oz stuff. I really suggest you guys watch The Return to Oz by Disney in 1985. Fucking talk about Disney went pretty hard on it. It definitely has Dark Crystal vibes going on, and there's a lot of Aries symbolism in there, and they bring more of the magic, but it's also really dark. So
I'll
it's really
check it out.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, it's been a true pleasure. Kayleigh, were you gonna say something? I'm so sorry. I'm such a terrible POS.
Hey, your phone is giving
Just
you
kidding.
lips
I'm
again.
not.
It's okay.
Yeah. Well, maybe a little bit. Okay, goddamn it. Here we go.
Say it again, Kayleigh. Say it a little louder.
Oh, just his microphone gave him lips again. Thank you, Romie, for bringing us together to do this today. Lots of fun. So appreciate that. And Tim, I would be interested if you have published a children's book, since that is what you said got you into even looking at this in the first place. I'd be curious to see it if you published it.
Yep, it's forthcoming. So
okay, all right.
Yeah.
We're waiting. Yeah, we're gonna do
waiting.
the shit out of that.
Yes.
But just thank you guys for doing this today with us, and that's I don't know. That's all I gotta say.
Well, I'm grateful for all of you, amazing, smart, amazing, awesome, amazing, beautiful, amazing humans. Because if it wasn't for you guys, with this doing the work that you do, and we're so dedicated to this research, and it's we ain't out here getting all the millions of dollars, while we're de-occulting and demystifying, but it's more than that, and it's so much more than the monetary things. That doesn't even correlate. This is so much just unfolding the beautiful symbiotic goodness of the community that we have growing. And just every time that we get on the horn and we do these chats, it just creates more stronger bonds. And it's amazing. So I'm really grateful for you guys, you know, everybody for coming out, doing this, taking time out of our days. And, you know, man, it's just great. Gabe, you're out of here. I'm gonna pop over to your moon night with the homies, the boys. That's awesome,
Yeah,
man.
guys,
Thank
I'll
you,
see you
brother.
all over there.
Yeah. Peace.
Much love, everybody.
Bye. And yeah,
Bye.
so for us, Oz, what was that, Kayleigh? You got something to say, bud?
From one deocculting to another, the man's a machine.
The man is a machine. Yeah, he's for those listening or watching, this will be out afterwards. I am going to do a little bit of editing, but him and Chance and Gordy are doing. They have a demystification series they're working on with the Marvel series, and now that Disney owns Marvel, it's just even got more like the original Spider-Man's. Like, I don't necessarily think that they, you know, the big box office ones had like a bunch of alchemical situations going on, but now that Disney owns Marvel, like they're just ramping it up. Like it's gone pretty crazy. Like I can have my qualms with Disney, but we won't get into that now unless you guys want to. Kidding. Anyways,
Leave that for another day.
another 3 hours. Let's go. Thank you guys so much, Fire Tribe, and anyone new listening. If you made it through all the way, you are a true rock and roller. And we'll see you guys on the Telegram. So and we love you and thank you so much. Bye bye.
Awesome.